Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker with Maverick News, and I'm here with my handsome and talented co-host,
Brendan Kennedy, co-host for Maverick News. Good evening, Rick. Happy Monday. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, and we have lots of stuff to share with folks today. Tonight, we have a truly stacked broadcast and a special guest joining us, and that's really why. Coming up shortly in the broadcast, Jack McClellan will be joining us. He's a trucker, and he has been, dialed right in, tuned in to what is going on, what was going on in Ottawa and other locations across Canada with the truckers' protests, and he's still dialed in. He kind of has his finger on the pulse of everything going on. If there's anybody that knows what's happening with the Freedom Convoy in Canada and even in the U.S. to some degree, it's Jack, and he's going to share his insight and his thoughts on what the new plan for the freedom movement is likely to be in the weeks ahead. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that, because everybody is asking what happens next. And some truckers have been getting their trucks back after having them seized in Ottawa and in other locations. And we've seen a lot of efforts undertaken to kind of rekindle things. We've seen smaller protests pop up around Canada. We saw large ones again in cities like Toronto over the weekend, but nothing has had the impact like the main protest had in Ottawa. That was the focal point, and we all saw what happened up there. We saw how the cops went in and broke that up with a violent response and arrests, and they turned a completely peaceful protest into chaos, and I'm sure Jack will have more to say about that as well. Any thoughts on that, Brendan? What else do we have teed up for tonight?
We're going to take a look into James Top and see whereabout on his cross-Canada journey on foot is going to be taking him and where he's at right now. Also, we'll be checking in on the progress of the Freedom Convoy, the People's Convoy in the United States, and getting a little bit of a view on that. So there's lots of different things happening all at once. And, you know, just because there's something going on in Ukraine does not mean that we still don't have problems going on here. The mandates still are not gone. So whether or not these provincial governments are saying that they will no longer be doing vaccine passports, you bet your hiney that they're still going to be that legislation and that framework in their back pocket, that they could pull it out whenever they want to. And so there's a lot of problems in that regard that simply haven't gone away because the narrative has changed. So
right.
There's lots of different things happening.
I can also tell our viewers that we are definitely on the radar with the technocracy, the big tech companies. In the last week, we've been targeted because of our efforts to bring you another perspective on the news, and we've received some, how shall I put it, warnings from YouTube, Facebook, and we're under attack as well, I can tell you that. We've had some left-wing operatives trying to hack us, take down our email systems, but we have robust security in place, and all of that has really been unsuccessful largely, but we are taking note of that. And what that tells me, especially when YouTube sends us a warning, is that we are definitely right over the target. So we're going to keep on doing what we're doing. and we'll take our licks. And I know that we have a giant target on us right now. So be it, because we are here to fight on the front lines of the information war as we fight for freedom in our own way, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom for the free media, freedom of the press, if you will. And now more than ever, that's what we need, because we need more independent journalists. We need an alternative point of view, a counterbalance to the mainstream media. And that's because, especially in Canada, the media is now, the mainstream media is completely funded, not completely, but they're all taking money from the government, large sums of money. And that is definitely having an impact on the way the news is being presented by the legacy media. What you're looking at here right now is live feeds from the People's Convoy in the U.S., inspired, I guess, by what happened here in Canada, and now across the United States. We're following that as well, and we have thousands and thousands of truckers heading to Washington, D.C., all scheduled to arrive there around March the 5th. Isn't that right, Brendan?
That's right. So the trucker convoy is moving on quite well. They are accumulating quite a number of donations, and the organization of what they are doing there is astounding how quickly it's going. Today they departed from Veneta, Oklahoma, and will be arriving in Cuba, Missouri tonight. So that's where they're at there. Tomorrow they are expecting to arrive as far as Indianapolis in Indiana. So they're making their way. They're coming quickly. And I have a feeling Joe Biden is probably already hiding inside of his basement.
So here's a live feed.
All of their profiles
Here's
are
a
on there.
live feed coming out of...
I'm glad I didn't know about this. I'm actually screenshotting this for me. I do some programs. We're doing this whole thing live. I was in DC
So
from
we'll
like
get this live feed.
at that time, and
We'll just pull it down until we get to something with proper context, so that I'm not just picking something up in the middle of
All the different prisoners. So I'm
middle of things here, but they're talking about some other cause other than the People's Convoy. But from all the footage we've been seeing, yeah, like lots of it's pretty incredible, the number of trucks that have become involved in this People's Convoy in the States. And just like in Canada, we're seeing people lining the highways and standing on overpasses to show their support for the truckers. And it's actually pretty amazing. Amazing to see the numbers of truckers out on the highways and byways participating in the convoy, how quickly it's all come together. And it's all to bring an end to these medical mandates. That's what they're asking for. That's what they're demanding.
Do you think the United States government is going to take a couple of chapters out of the book of Trudeau when it comes to the handling of this sort of thing?
That's a very good question. I
Yeah,
can't see.
We already know they have 700 National Guardsmen in the capital, U.S. Capitol right now, in anticipation for what's happening. So I mean,
I hope it doesn't. I'm hoping and praying everything remains peaceful. I think that was the key to the success that the truckers enjoyed in Canada. They were absolutely 100% peaceful, even though the media kept portraying it as a violent insurrection. There was no evidence of that. And as we saw the only violence really that was evident came from police when they came in their riot gear after more than 3 weeks of peaceful protesting. And I mean, we are talking about peaceful protesting with dancing in the streets, speeches, people waving flags, singing the national anthem, bouncy castles for kids, hot tubs. You all saw it. The media wanted in the worst way, and the government, the politicians opposed to what the truckers were there for, they wanted in the worst way for this thing to go the other way, a violent way. They wanted this to turn into some sort of an insurrection, as they called it. They called it an occupation. They called it this. They called it that. They smeared those truckers and the other protesters who came out to support them as a bunch of racists and fascists, Nazis. And nothing could have been further from the truth.
I gotta
But
tell
that
you,
was the key. They stayed peaceful. Hopefully we see the same thing happen in the States.
absolutely. That's what I really hope. And the biggest thing that hurts my brain about all of this, and it tantalizingly hurts my brain, like it's terrible how much it hurts my brain, is they say, we need to fight for democracy in Ukraine, but don't you dare talk about things that we don't like or don't agree with here in Canada, because we will declare a state of emergency and we'll steal your money, lock you down.
Yeah, I'm just checking something someone sent in to me here just on the fly. So just give me a second here, Brendan. I need to vet this information. I'm not sure if it's something we can or even should share, but let me just skim through this. Hang on just a second. Maybe you can just talk to the folks for a moment, and I'll see if this is something we need to share.
Okay, so I think with this People's Convoy, I think that we're going to see Joe Biden screwed up. We have a consistency of seeing Joe Biden screwed things up ever since he's come into power. And it's to the point where people don't even know how badly Joe Biden has screwed up. But just the very fact that they put the National Guard in there already is kind of a disappointment, that they've already kind of set what their expectations of this is going to be. They think it's going to, they'll probably accuse it of being an insurrection and all this other stuff, which, I mean, will remain to be seen at this point. But I'm definitely worried about agitators in this situation. It's always been a very consistent problem in the United States. Like, an unbelievably ridiculous problem. We've seen that with Glenn Youngkin's campaign. We've seen it January 6th in Washington, D.C. So provocateurs, whether they be government related or not, I suspect will probably be a bit of a problem. But it's going to remain to be seen. I do hope that this is going to be peaceful. I hope it's going to be good.
I'm back. I can talk again if you need me to. I'm not going to share that information. It's a government feed, but I don't think we should share it until we vet it further. I don't like what I'm hearing, and I don't want to share anything until I'm sure it's accurate.
Yeah, better stay away from it then.
Yeah.
Better stay away from it then. We don't need that.
I'll try and verify it through the broadcast or find out exactly what it's all about. And if it's worthy, we'll bring it up partway through the broadcast. So again, Jack McClellan coming up shortly. Jack is a trucker. He's going to talk to us about. He's going to give us his perspective on what happened in Ottawa, and what happened at the border points in Canada as well. And he'll give us some insight into what is still being done to fight for freedom across Canada and the U.S. and might give you guys some ideas on what you can do that might be constructive on your end as well. If you're interested in getting involved in something, then that's where Jack would come in. And we don't direct people here. We're practicing a form of journalism, a new form of journalism. We're not here to direct people or tell people what to do. We have our own opinions. But Jack, he might have some suggestions for people.
Exactly. He's involved. He'll know. And he'll be able to direct you to any way you may be able, if you are looking to help. And we'll have to go from there.
One other thing I wanted to bring up. So this is what's going on in the United States. We've got various locations, truckers from all over the country, really, heading to Washington, D.C. I can tell you today, too, this is why I've been receiving all kinds of phone calls and email messages. My email has blown up with people messaging. And during these broadcasts, the messages are flying fast and furious, but it's the phone calls. People seeking us out and calling me directly. And I received a few phone calls today, and they were from truckers who are honestly in tears. And they were honestly crying on the other end of the phone because they feel, and these were truckers from the United States in various places, and they're in despair because they see what's happening to the United States, and they've seen what happened in Canada. They saw what happened to the protesters in Ottawa, and they feel that the United States is slipping away, and they think that Canada is much further along when it comes to the country being eroded, freedoms being taken away. And like me, the truckers who called today to speak with me shared my view that Canada has basically been lost, that the Canada we knew is gone, that we currently have a government that is embracing a political ideology that is unlike anything that we have ever embraced as a country before, because it is so far left and so radical, and because it's actually a globalist agenda that they are now invoking upon the country, and it's very authoritarian. And all of these things that just a short time ago people dismissed as conspiracy theories are now being rolled out in Canada. Digital IDs, and now even a universal basic income. And I can show you what I'm talking about here. I'd like to bring this to your attention. There is this Bill S-233. This is an act to develop a national framework for a guaranteed livable basic income, which received first reading December 16th, 2021. This, folks, is the universal basic income. Now, a lot of people would be in favor of this because in their mind, this is like going to eliminate poverty. It will, they would think, it makes sure that everyone in the country gets a livable income. But there are problems with this. A lot of problems, I think. And this really takes us down a path that a lot of people have been predicting. Mm-hmm. And this comes with a catch. Because in order to get this money, you have to do certain things, like be vaccinated. And if you don't, then you don't get to participate in this or in other aspects of society. In my view, this is a trap. It's a trap because there's no such thing as a free lunch. When they say this is a universal basic income, where do you think the money comes from? It comes out of your pocket. And if it's not coming out of your pocket, it's money that they're borrowing from your children's and your grandchildren's future. It's as simple as that. The government produces nothing. Government takes money through coercion and then redistributes it in a manner that they see fit. They give it to their friends. They buy votes. And that's what they're doing here. They're buying your support, your vote, with your own money. This doesn't come out of thin air. And what they're doing through something like this is they're controlling people. You cannot be owned and be a free person. If everyone gets this money, if this is implemented, it puts everyone on a form of welfare. Productivity is going to drop. A lot of people will stop going to work. It will be increasingly difficult for small businesses to hire people. It will almost force everyone to participate in order to make sure that you're on the same plane, the same level as everyone else in your neighborhood, so that you're not starving to death. You actually get your universal basic income as well. The whole point of this is control. They're buying you. And once they've bought you, you have to do what they tell you to do. There's no such thing as a free lunch. This is a trap.
Oh, big time. And, you know, once you're beholden to the government, you'll have to follow whatever rules that they set aside for you, not just vaccination. It could be any number of things.
And they'll impose those rules on everyone. Even if, you see, this is the beginning of a social credit system. Not just the beginning, this is the full implementation, really. And this is why government feels justified in imposing mandates. Because from a politician's or a bureaucrat's point of view, from the government's point of view, if they're giving you free health care, free money, they own you. And they get to tell you what to do. Well, some people have said, it's just a conspiracy theory. Well, there it is, Bill S-233, universal basic income. It's something that people have talked about for a long time.
Yeah. You could pull up what I'm sharing here right now.
Sure.
It'll show you exactly what you're talking about. This is a well-armed and well-funded and well-put-together activist organization that is pushing for support of universal basic income and is working in the background to push people to go with this policy. It has quick links to communicating with politicians and so on and so forth. I'm just absolutely kind of mind blown by this and how much work and effort they put into this. And see, yeah, that's exactly what you'll bloody become if you go with basic income, is you'll be a bloody robot. That's what you will be. A slave to the state. You'll be unable to make your own choices, and that'll be that.
I understand people who think this is a great idea. I understand how this appeals to people. And my guess is people will even vote for it. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this becomes a focal point in the next federal election. And I would not be at all surprised if the public votes and reelects Justin Trudeau as he embraces this program and promotes it and sort of makes it a central plank in his platform in the next election. But I'm just telling you, this is a trap. This will have horrific long-term and even short-term consequences. There's nothing fair or ethical about it. The reason being, where does the money come from? It comes from, as I said, straight from taxpayers, people who actually produce, or they borrow it, which just pushes the debt burden further down the road. And that's going to be a problem in the long run. So I'm just warning you. Now, folks, let's move on here and bring in our guest for the night. There he is, Jack McClellan. Jack, welcome.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks, Brendan. Is the lighting okay?
It looks great. Looks just fine, yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
We really appreciate you joining us tonight, Jack. We know that you're a trucker, right?
I am.
And you have had some contact with some of the key people, main players, I guess, who were involved in Ottawa and even in other locations across Canada, part of the freedom movement. So you guys sort of have your finger or your fingers or thumb on the pulse, I guess, of the freedom movement. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I was spokesman for the biggest blockade in Canadian history in 1989 and 90 in Ottawa, where we were the second day that we were sitting in the caucus talking to the Liberals who were not in power, but still we were in the House on the second day.
Okay. Take us back. Let's go back in time before we get into everything that happened in Ottawa and at the border locations and everything going on in the U.S. right now. Take us back to that time, because we'd actually mentioned some of these past blockades, in Canadian history. I covered a blockade at the Ambassador Bridge back in, I think it was 1991. But take us back and tell us about your experience in the 70s. What exactly happened back then?
Well, it was 89 and 90. In the 70s, you had a protest or what you would call a moving blockade in the United States, where it got quite violent. Truckers that were wanting to stop went on strike and tried to stop truckers that didn't want to stop. And it got quite dirty and quite out of hand, where ours didn't do that.
Right. So fast forward to what happened in Canada and what you were involved with. Tell us about that. And what we have on the screen here right now, that's footage from what was going on in Ottawa before, right, Brendan?
That's correct, yes. It's from,
Okay, so
I believe, number of days ago.
Yeah, we'll just let some of this roll while you talk, Jack. But take us back to what you were involved with.
89, 90.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was the what you would call today the free trade agreement between Mexico, United States, and Canada caused many manufacturing plants to basically lay off a lot of workers in their 40s and their 50s, and there was a lot of people out of work. It was a very difficult time for many people. And what the government did then was supply $5,000 chits, like basically a $5,000 loan. It wasn't a loan, it was a grant, you'd call it a grant, to all these people. And then they sent them to driving schools like Maribor and other driving schools to get their Class A license. And then companies sold them trucks at little or no down payment and put them out on the highway. So we were getting flooded on the highway with drivers who had no experience. I found dozens of drivers in truck stops across the continent just sitting crying their eyes out or going to kill themselves in despair because they didn't realize what they were getting into. And so it really damaged the trucking industry hugely. there's a lot of, like one guy I know, I will not say his name because he's still alive, but one day I'll announce his name. He sold the same truck to 17 different drivers. What he would do is they would lease you the truck and then give you 3 months of work, 2.5, 3 months of steady, good work. Then they would start weaning you off little bit by little bit by little bit to where you couldn't pay your fuel or you couldn't pay your truck payment. They'd repossess the truck. You would still end up in court paying for it, and then you would release the truck to somebody else. And this type of thing was going on, and we just got sick and tired of it. We got sick and tired of government intervention in a trade they know nothing about, never did, never have, probably never will. So
right. So I remember that. I mean, that was back when Mulrooney was in power.
Yep.
And
John Gorbet was his Minister of Transport.
Right. And free trade was one of the main issues in the elections back then. And I remember those blockades. I remember the big blockade at the Ambassador Bridge back then.
That was started by one guy who was an alcoholic. That's how it got started, because one individual named Wayne Whitney was going to get released from his temporary day job with Canada Transport, and he went to the Union Hall and said, "Hey, because you have to pay a union card to get in the automotive shops, right? But all it is a card that lets you get in. It doesn't give you any benefits or rights." And he went to the Union Hall and complained, and he talked about shutting down the bridge. He was half cut when he got there. And they said, "Yeah, go ahead, we'll back you up." And so he walked out on the bridge and started shutting down traffic. That's how all that got started.
Yeah, that was huge. I covered that for CTV when I worked for them back in those days. And it was huge. But tell us a little bit more about the impact and how all of that unfolded, and did any of it make any difference back then?
Nothing. All it did was show that drug drivers could stick together if they made the decision to. But as far as getting anything out of Ottawa or Mulrooney or Jean Gorbet or Phillips, who became the next Minister of Transport in the Bob Rae government, in a nutshell, they're all idiots. That's the best, intellectual idiots, well-educated, but as stupid as a block of wood. And we got nothing. We got promises. We had plenty of promises, but we actually got nothing out of it whatsoever, of any concrete results, except we learned that we could stick together.
So you did actually get a sit-down meeting at some point, though. How did that happen, and what happened when that rolled out?
Well, when we went to Ottawa, we basically told them that you will permit us to put a truck on the hill, which they did. The RCMP negotiated, and they let us put one conventional Mack with a flatbed trailer up on the actual, right up on Parliament Hill in front of the Parliament buildings, as long as we left the emergency egress lanes open for them, which we did. And the Ottawa police actually were the same way. We could park all along the streets, but we made sure there was 2-lane traffic actually open. We didn't interfere with the citizens of Ottawa.
Right.
And then with the actual meeting with Lloyd Axworthy, who was the interim leader, and with the members of the caucus of the Liberal Party, we had a couple of ladies whose husbands had killed themselves from the stress, and they did a presentation, and that didn't turn out too well because empty promises. People sitting there said, "Oh yeah, we know how you feel." One guy even said, "Oh, he used to drive truck." And when I queried him afterwards, he used to drive a pickup truck hauling some wood at the forest. So it was a sad tale, really, that these families had really hoped to get some type of good result, and they got nothing.
So that I guess must have been disheartening, frustrating, and I guess that has been lingering for a long time, the impact of all that.
Well, we went down the road thinking we were going to get something, and it was over time did we realize they weren't changing anything. They were just making things more complicated. The MTO in Ontario especially put more pressures on truckers, stopping them, inspecting them more, and it just got to be almost an aggravation, right? You skip the scales, you go around them, you do whatever you have to stay away from them. Now, not all scales were that way, just certain ones. They wielded their hammer, so to speak, right? So we drove the NDP out. We put them in power by voting for them, and then when they pretty well fell apart inside the first 3 days, the NDP came apart. We drove them out of power, and then Bob Ray became the ambassador to the UN for the Liberal Party. Go figure. That's like
Yeah.
Jagmeet Singh. Jagmeet Singh has got his lips glued to Trudeau. I mean, that's an embarrassment to Sikhs. I know a lot of Sikhs that trained lots of them to drive, and they can't stand him. They're embarrassed. He's an embarrassment to them. They can't believe the way he acts. So.
Yes, we've definitely seen a lot of collusion between the New Democrat Party of Canada and the Justin Trudeau Liberal Party. Do you think politics has changed much since that initial movement, or do you think it's more or less the same?
I was a delegate to the Doug Ford Convention in 2018. I saw firsthand the corruption that went on at a convention. He literally turned Doug Trudeau, flip-flop, king of the flip-floppers is what we call him. He literally flip-flopped on the night of the convention. He had made promises and he flipped right in the middle of them and went the other way. And he's been a total disappointment to all of us that voted for him, because his brother Rob, we respected Rob. Rob was a fighter. And unfortunately, his grapefruit-sized tumor took him out. He would take anybody out, right? But Doug, we thought Doug was the big brother. Like, he was standing by Rob and being staunch and being strong. But he really turned out to be a vulture. He couldn't wait for his brother to leave so he could make his power play in. And none of us have any use for Doug Ford or any of the staff. Like Christine Elliott, I'm sure her husband rolls over just thinking about what she does.
Yeah,
but he was a member of WEF, though we find out now, which meant Doug Ford is a member of WEF, the World Economic Forum, which should be a charge of treason as far as I'm concerned.
That's a really good point. I believe you're right. It's very clear the type of things that we're seeing, the WEF push out, and we're seeing leaders all across the world mimic that in regards to Build Back Better and all kinds of other atrocious programs. How do you feel about the World Economic Forum's infiltration on some Conservative Party members like Michelle Rempel?
Well, Klaus Schwab, if you see him running around with the little, what you would call a penis cover or whatever, is like some of the videos and shots of him, totally psychotic individual. He's unhinged. And then he goes and brags about how they've infiltrated over 50% of the cabinet of the Liberal government. That in itself and by itself should be a reason for the Governor General to shut down Parliament and to call a vote and do a forensic audit into every single individual in the House. I'm talking on all three parties, well, four with the Bloc Québécois, but if I had my way, I would suspend all judges in Canada with pay, because there are honest judges. You suspend them all with pay. You set up tribunals of law enforcement officers, military, and community people, like community citizens of a high standard. And then you do a forensic audit on every judge to find out where's their money coming from and is their lifestyle in balance with their money. And the ones that come up clean should be allowed to run for election, not be appointed by their peers in their community that are going to serve. And the ones that come up dirty should go off to the Huskal and await decision by the tribunal as to what to do with them.
That would definitely send widespread panic amongst the political elite.
Well, we see the results. Tamara Lich, if you've ever met her, she was the one who decided to do the GoFundMe.
Yes.
And right, she's just, there's people who made accusations about Tamara Lich, Benjamin Dichter, and Danji. I think it's Paula. And I never met Benjamin, but I worked with Danji, and I met Tamara. And I was quite satisfied with the answers they gave me when I asked Danji. I said, "Did you run as the campaign manager for that nutcase, what's his name? Marco Medicino, I think it is."
Mhm.
Yep.
Like that boy is missing some serious marbles in his bag.
No, he's sick in the head. We did cover on this program here live. We did cover the results of the Emergency Act. And we did catch up with him on a live demonstration that he did on CPAC afterwards. And after they had pushed through the Emergency Act, there he is. He's smiling. He's very happy with his results, that he's pushing through this tyranny through the Canadian people. And that to me was despicable, for lack of a better term, or for lack of not wanting to use worse language than that. So
Senator Gold in the Senate was another one. He spoke over 6 hours. Did you know that? Over 6 hours knocking truck drivers and knocking the protest. And like my father, who couldn't read or write, would have said about him. He would have said, "Never have a battle of wits with an unarmed man." That boy is really, I don't know, maybe child abuse or something in his life. There's got to be something traumatic to affect your cognitive dissonance, like your rational thinking. It can only get knocked that far off of balance by something horrendous in your life. That's my personal opinion.
yeah.
And I fear no one. I just speak the truth.
So fast forward to Ottawa and the Freedom Convoy and everything that happened up there. Give me your take on what happened. Did the truckers make some gains? I mean, you were up there, you saw what was going on, and there's so much to unpack with all of that, whether you're talking about the way the media handled it or what you saw on the ground, the way the government's dealt with it. But before we get into any of the details, was it productive? Did the truckers gain any ground at the end of all of that?
Okay, well, Shakespeare has a quote. It says, "Alas, but what is in a name? For that which we call a rose by any other name would smell just as sweet." So even though you call it the Emergency Measures Act, it's the War Measures Act. That doesn't change. Name doesn't change anything. So they declared war on us, which is fine. We're good with that. But what we were impressed most with, unbelievably, was the Canadian citizens who never drove trucks, never been in a truck, many of them, who showed up and went toe to toe against police, against riot squads. I mean, they were our heroes, and we loved them for it and appreciated and respect them. But we were shocked by how many Canadian citizens showed up, handing money in through the windows of trucks. I had she was probably 2.5, come up to me and pull on my pant leg, and when I looked down, she had a little card and a sucker, and it said "Happy Valentine, Trucker," and that was sweet.
Yeah.
And we had that so much that you could probably write a 10,000-page book of the experiences of the Canadian citizens stepping up to the forefront to thank us, to just say, "Don't quit, don't give up." And if there's any message we need to get out to these people, is we're not going away. Right? The weather's going to get warmer, and we're not going anywhere. We are here for the long term. We're here for the long run, and we are going to drive this government out of power because they don't respect us. They don't treat the people of this country fairly. They run a crooked immigration system. and it's all public trough money is what they're feeding them. So yeah, and so what we learned in Ottawa is that we trust the Canadian public to give us their support, so we in turn will win their trust and gain their belief in what we can do. We've only just started.
So the Emergencies Act or War Measures Act has been revoked, but the thing that I think is concerning is some aspects of it still remain in place, in particular some of these financial weapons that they unleashed on specifically the truckers, but the public in general, especially people who they felt were supporters or people who donated maybe. So they have these financial weapons still in place where they can go after bank accounts and so on. What are your thoughts on that?
It means nothing. We move thousands of dollars around all the time. People walk up and say, here's I had somebody walk up the other day, and it would have been what's today, still would have been Saturday. Walk up and say, here's $1,126. What do you think I should do with it? And I said, I know exactly where it has to go. And I give it over two drivers $550 each, and the one driver said, no, I'm good. So the other driver, I gave him $1,000 and bought him dinner, and gave him $1,000 for fuel, which is exactly what he needed to get him home. So it doesn't matter what the banks do. The TD Bank, I know you can buy gold pieces and slivers there, I think at $20. But other than the TD Bank, we'll tank the other banks over time. We have no use for them, none whatsoever. They're just part of the WEF.
TD Bank you're referring to specifically?
And all of them,
Yeah.
BMO, CIBC, all the five major banks, all dance to the tune of sock boy or frat boy or whatever you want to call them. So I have no respect for him, and I'll tell you why. He has no idea what it's like to have sweat run down your back and in your eyes to where you can't see what you're doing, or to stand on top of a car holder in February in freezing rain, trying not to fall 15 feet or 20 feet to the ground, or have your father-in-law take home your firstborn child because you weren't there to pick him up. You had to be on a load down in Kentucky while he's laying with a hole in his heart. You don't know if he's going to be alive when you get home. See, these people have no idea what that's like. They have no idea what it's like to sweat to pay your mortgage, right?
Yeah.
You do it without food so your family can eat. They have no idea.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, and this is something we've talked extensively about on our show here, being these politicians are very out of touch, and it's almost as if between America and Canada there's been a war declared on the working class, that we don't know what's good for us, and that they know better than we do, and if we don't do what they do, then they'll contact the Justice Department, they'll contact law enforcement agencies, and that sort of thing. Do you share that perspective as well, or?
Absolutely. They started this over 400 years ago in the days of the feudal landlord system, when you had serfs and you had waifs, spelled WAIFS. And so you had serfs and you had waifs, and the waifs were given to the serfs to provide children for future workforce. And it's like the royal family. People ask, like, oh, they worship this royal family, though I did love Diana. They worship this royal family, but if you read Common Sense by Thomas Paine, the architect of the Declaration of Independence for the United States.
Yes,
Thomas
for the record,
Paine,
the author of The Rights of Man, which is an excellent pamphlet. Read it if you ever get a chance. It is amazing. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I'm going to write that down. You call it The Rights of Man?
Yeah, The Rights of Man, Thomas Paine.
Yep, I got it. But he explained how, like if you and I worked all week and go to the pub on Saturday night and we discussed something going on with the Lord of the Manor or something, we weren't happy with something. The next Saturday, one of us would be found hung upside down and skinned like a deer outside the pub. So when you went in the pub and somebody started talking to you about politics, which is really just important issues of the day, you would get up and leave, or you would tell them, "Shut up, we don't talk politics," wouldn't you? So they put the fear. That's how the royal families all started. They used to go in and subjugate a village. They would cut off their hands. I mean, this sounds horrible, but they would amputate the hands and legs and everything. They put the fear into these people. And after 2 or 3 or 4 generations, people forgot why they worship these people, right? So, and they haven't changed. These people, like the people that run this country in the United States, UK, Australia, they're not afraid to do anything to keep control. They'll murder us. They'll do whatever they have to do. And they've already proven that.
So the protests that we saw roll out across Canada, the convoys, seems to me they were highly successful in some respects, because it showed people who were concerned about these ongoing mandates that they're not alone. It united truckers, it united Canadians, it reignited a high level of patriotism that we haven't seen in this country for a long time. I think it also showed the government that there's a lot more opposition to what they're doing than maybe they thought. And I think that gave people hope. And I think that's the key word here is hope. The truckers really did deliver hope, and they inspired other demonstrations around the world. And we're seeing that right now in the United States. So on the positive side, would you say that's a fair assessment, or are there other wins that were apparent to you?
Well, some people would look at this convoy as a failure in some cases because the GoFundMe money got taken, $10 million. But when they called me for counsel, which they did, one of the organizers, and he told me they were going to GoFundMe, I said, "Don't do it." And I won't use the words I told him, but he said, "You're going to get shafted." And then he said, "Well, we're going to go park in Ottawa." I said, "Don't do it. Trucks don't make money when they're sitting still. You can rotate trucks, 3 to 4 trucks is all you need. You can rotate them in and out, in and out, in and out." So that's maybe what they should have done, which they didn't do, and which I'm advising the United States truckers to do. However, the wins from Ottawa are almost astronomical. The bond between the average Canadian citizen and the truckers is unbelievable. It'll never be broken, ever. And you'll see a lot more truckers stopping on the side of the highway to help four-wheelers fix flats, checking to see if they're okay in the wintertime, just laughing, blowing horns, talking to them. There's been this amazing bond made between the everyday Canadian who stood up on the bridges and waved their flags and stood on the side of the road. It's amazing. And like I said, we're just getting started. And now that we know we have the backing of the Canadian people, which we didn't have in 89-90, we didn't have that. But now that we know it, we have the backing of the average Canadian citizen, there isn't anything we can't accomplish. If we have to start our own political party, we'll do it. But we are definitely going to get the handle back on this country. And so our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren will have the opportunity to fail or to succeed built on their own merit. And that's some stupid social credit system, brought in from China or somewhere. I mean, it's ludicrous that thought would ever be allowed to be even put out in this country. It's ridiculous. So, yeah.
That's an interesting point, because I myself have predicted that we're going to see inspiration amongst younger Canadians, younger than maybe we've seen in the past while, to get involved in politics, to get involved in municipal, provincial, or federal, or local and state and federal politics across the board. So do you think that is going to be a side effect to everything that's happened here? Has it inspired Canadians?
You won't find that anybody you talk to about me will tell you the same thing. I preach it day in, day out, day in, day out. And I was alluding to it before when I get a bit off track talking about the feudal landlord system, is they have embedded into this. I'm having this, by the way, and I've been for 44 years.
I'm sorry.
They have embedded into the subconscious of people they shouldn't talk about politics or religion, which is really important issues, right? Just important issues. So I tell everybody, if you want out of this, you need to start taking 5 to 10 minutes around the kitchen table. You don't need to preach to them. You don't need to berate them and drive them nuts where they want to eat next door. But just take 5 minutes and say, hey, is there anything we need to be up to date on? Is there any new school trustees? Who's the deputy mayor? Who's running for this, for the Reeve? Who's running for ombudsman? You know what I mean? Who's your ward representative? Do you know their name? Do you know their family? What do they stand for? What's their record? Where'd they come from? There's 10,000 questions that 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes around the kitchen table, you can keep your family up to date on. And this stuff doesn't happen. You don't get a Justin Trudeau leading a country when he couldn't figure out which shoelace to tie first. Sorry, he's a moron. And Justin, if you ever watch this, I'm serious. You're a complete intellectual moron. So
you hit the nail right on the head there, and I think that's kind of, I mean, I kind of suffer from a family that talks about religion and politics maybe too much, so it's sometimes it's at my detriment. But at the same time, I wish that a lot more people would accept these topics and talk about them more, because they are important. They are a part of your everyday life. They dictate what you do every day, and we are seeing that now.
You know what a talking stick is?
I'm sorry,
a talking stick.
Oh yeah, I've heard of the talking. Yeah, the speaking stick.
Yeah, speaking stick or talking stick, which was taught to George Washington by the natives, and his talking stick. I teach in meetings. You open with prayer. You use a talking stick, and you use 3 pillars of a meeting. First, everybody's ideas are worth listening to. Everybody gets a chance to say what they want to say without interruption, because you're using the talking stick. Is teamwork. Everybody pulls their load, and the key to that is accountability, reporting back to somebody that it was accomplished or not accomplished and why. And the last one is mutual respect. Everybody has a bad day. Everybody gets a migraine. Everybody gets the flu. You don't feel great. And sometimes you can do or say things to offend people. So mutual respect says, forgive them and move on. Don't judge people just because they're having a bad day. And if you run your meetings with those 3 pillars, you can't help but succeed.
That's 100% correct. And we have not seen any discussions with the Canadian people between the government and power, and they've distanced themselves from it. And with what has recently happened in Ukraine, you could really tell that the government is trying to change the story. Just last night, we had portrayed that Chrystia Freeland was participating in protests in Toronto, so it's okay for her to protest for things that she agrees with. But if things that you disagree with, then it resorts to name-calling and those types of tactics. So, I mean, it's very easy to see why we have all of these questions that come up and why we question their affiliation with the World Economic Forum. It's rules for them and not for us, and we do not dare speak with them about any of this.
Well, Stephen R. Covey, who I had supper with one time, the author of Seven Habits of Highly Successful People, he in that book, he starts off by saying you always begin with the end in mind. And they've never told us the end in mind. They just, if you watch Question Period, like I was really discouraged with the Conservative Party. I had told O'Toole, and then we'll get back to the Question Period. I had told Aaron O'Toole that his disrespect for the veterans. We had a veteran that 6-time Afghan vet who got turned away from the Legion on Remembrance Day. He was dressed with all his medals. He was dressed in full uniform, and he was turned away. While O'Toole and my brother and my nieces were all drinking together in the Legion. And I told him, I made sure he got the message that before I'm done, you'll be out of power. And I'm not taking credit for that. I just was able to see the writing on the wall. And there's others that are going to go down the same road. So I lost track of what we're talking. Sorry, O'Toole just makes my blood boil.
Oh, he makes my blood boil too. And you know what? I blame the entire failure of the last election solely on his shoulders. He failed to be the opposition. He kept trying to be the Liberal Party, thinking that it would buy him votes, but all it did was turn people off of him.
You want to see the truth of any election? You scrutineer. I've scrutineered a number of them. And when you're scrutineer, you're in there while the count's going on. And we don't use machines as they like people to think. They do an actual ballot count, and you check them off, and then we have to sign off on them when they're done. And I watched at the General Sikorsky Hall how the lineup, that's in Oshawa, how the lineup was like a half to 3/4 miles long up the road, and it was all new Canadians with their first time voter registration sheets in their hands, lining up like getting that. And I told a friend of mine there, I said, "There's how the vote's going to win right there." And it's not the immigrants' fault. You cannot blame the immigrants. What it is that the imams and the reps go in and scare the daylights out of the immigrants and say, "Hey, if you don't vote Liberal, your aunt, your uncle, your grandmother, your child, whatever it is that they want to bring to this country, will never be allowed to come to this country." So what would you do if you were the immigrant? You're going to vote in favor of the party that's going to leave the immigration doors wide open. So we'll go back to question period real quick. If you watch question period, it's designed to put people off being involved in politics. And I once said, if I was in the House of Commons, I'd be going to jail for assault. Because if I was speaking, you interrupt me, I'm going to go over there and pound you into your seat. I'm sorry, that's just the type of person I am. And it's the rudest, most obnoxious, ignorant group of people you ever saw in your life. That when someone's speaking, like John Diefenbaker, you remember him? Remember John Diefenbaker?
Not in my lifetime, but I'm aware of him, yeah.
Oh, you got to go watch videos of John Diefenbaker speaking. He was an orator. He was a gentleman. He was a man of unbelievable being able to present his ideas. He's still screwed up with the Everett, but he wasn't perfect.
No.
But no, the question period puts people off politics. There's 2 courses. If I had my druthers, by the way, Druthers magazine is a great paper. If I had my druthers, there'd be 2 courses started in grade 5 at age 10. One would be political science, which teaches the young people how we got to where we are, how it started. It was built on biblical principles. It was built on truth and being honest to your neighbor. And then what we need to do to keep that in line. And the other one I would teach is fiscal responsibility. And those 2 courses it doesn't matter how good you play basketball or football or hockey, you don't move on until you pass those 2 courses. So then we raise a generation of educated, intelligent, rational thinking people. You get the majority of them at least know where we came from politically and what we need to do fiscally to keep the country solidified, right?
So what we're looking at here on the screen, Jack, is a live feed out of California, the People's Convoy. What are your thoughts on what's happening in the States? Is that going to make a difference, and will it have an impact here in Canada?
That's right. I think that's where you saw me on. Trent knows 1,000 truckers, yet he doesn't know anybody in this convoy. You had to be very careful with the Canadian Trucking Association and the American Trucking Association. They have trucking in their name, but they have nothing to do with owner-operators, nothing whatsoever. They are strictly for big companies and unions and that, like union hierarchy. They have nothing to do with drivers and truckers. And you have to be very careful that they don't orchestrate something like a red flag to make people look bad. However, with that said, Trent so far has seen some good things. He mentioned to me today, actually, that so far things look pretty good. But we'll keep an eye on it. The minute they park their trucks in protest, they're sitting ducks. They're no different than we were in Ottawa. So you never let your truck sit. You're either making money or you're making protests, but you always move. Unless you're sleeping, of course. But they don't want to park their trucks.
That was the biggest mistake that was made in Canada, you think, was parking the rigs?
Yeah, and using GoFundMe,
Mm-hmm.
like using like Give Send Go is an American company. I mentioned back then that you should take 75 to 100 drivers across the border, Huggins in New York, and just go down and everybody pull out $9,950, the equivalent of it, in Canadian funds and come back across the border. That would have gave us $100,000 a day coming in cash to move around, and they didn't do it, so the government was able to scoop it, which is still beyond, like, that's okay. We're not done with them.
So do you know, with GoFundMe, I believe the money is being refunded to the people who donated it. What's happening with the Give Send Go funds? Do you know?
We have lawyers working on it right now. So that money is still sitting in accounts in the United States. The Canadian government can't touch it. Give Send Go won't let them touch it. And it'll be starting to be withdrawn eventually. And the transferred where it needs to go.
It seems to me that what the government has done, it can't be constitutionally legal for them to do this.
What was that word you used?
Constitutionally.
Constitution. Is that the program that Pierre Elliott Trudeau repatriated and did what he wanted with it? It was toilet paper by the time he was done with it.
Right. Yeah, well, with the charter, it's clear that it's a failed document, and that's largely because of the notwithstanding cause.
Yeah, the Bill of Rights is still powerful, though. But the most powerful thing is the vote. The most powerful thing is our ousting Doug Ford in Ontario in June. I belong to the New Blue Party, if you don't mind me giving it a plug.
Sure.
And I was the team leader for the PPC in Durham against O'Toole. And I wouldn't give you a plug nickel for the PPC or Randy Hillier or Bernier or their Jim Torma is his name. He runs around like a nutcase. He causes more problems in Ottawa than you can shake a stick. Like with the Conservatives, and a lot of people like Leslyn Lewin. Is it Leslyn? Yeah, I think it's
Leslyn Lewis. Yeah.
Lewis. Sorry.
Yeah.
Leslyn Lewis. I know a lot of people liked her when she was running, but I don't trust Pierre Bolivier, and I'll tell you why, or Michael Chung, who I volunteered for 2 campaigns for, or Candace Bergen, because I practically begged them in emails. I sent emails, and it isn't strange. When you send money, you get an immediate answer, but when you send a request, you don't hear from them. And I practically begged them to come out on the street and talk to the truck drivers. Take your caucus with you and walk up the street and shake hands and hugs. Get to meet the kids, see your pets, get to meet the drivers, and talk to them one-on-one. And none of them come out. I understand Pierre was hanging around the stage for a while and said something, but no, he lost all respect in my eyes. He's like Grandma Boy. He gets up and it's all yakety yak, 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 and look how good I look and all the fancy things I sing. But no, I think Leslyn Lewis, in my books, would probably have the best shot. And there's a guy named Zimmer. Is it Bob Zimmer? There's another conservative that did a really good job. But then I asked the same question. Where were you 2 years ago when this garbage started? Right? If you didn't have a voice back then, so.
No, anybody who spoke out about any issues they saw in regards to pandemic response was automatically shunned and demonized and censored by big tech. So these parties really haven't left us with anything left to trust from them. That we don't know what their intentions are. We don't know what they did not behave as an opposition should behave. It's astounding. I did want to ask you about this.
Go ahead.
So the judge, Julie Bourgeois, or whatever her name was, she had deemed that Tamara Lich, it says here, your detention is necessary for the protection and safety of the public. What was your response on Tamara Lich being denied bail?
Well, I remember I was sitting in the Arca Hotel, which is the operation. She was kind of nervous and shaking and stuff. And I said, "You all right?" And she said, "No." She said, "The pressure's getting to me." And it was. She had so many people going after her. I said, "Look at me." I said, "You're going to be all right." I said, "You just hang out here with us for a little bit." And I watched as her husband walked through the door, because that's who she was waiting for. He had flown in. And when he walked through the door, it was like watching a movie. Like, two people running together. It was pretty amazing. And I could see the love and the respect they had for each other. And you could see her just relax. Her whole body just sort of just went into this relaxed mode. And so when they locked her up, I looked at the judge, and right off the bat, I'm called a driller. I can drill down on anything. And so I drilled down, and right off the bat, I found that the judge was appointed by Trudeau. He's in Trudeau's pocket. So you can't expect anything less than what that judge does. So that's the type of judge I'd suspend and have a forensic audit done immediately. Like you own a cottage, what kind of car do you drive? Where do you go for vacation? I drilled right in. I'd know what, how many molars he had in the back of his mouth and who paid for them.
Lucas Marley writes here, speak more on PPC. They seem good, but you say no. Do you want to comment more on that, Jack?
Well, yeah. So Jim Karahalios with the New Blue Party, I met him several years ago. I met him at a Michael Chung speaking engagement. We're at the Holton Wellington Writing Association. And Jim got up and talked about accountability, integrity, honesty, all these things that were lacking in the political party, in the PC party in Ontario. And that's when I joined Jim's camp. And he's never said or done anything to push me away yet. So Jim ran for the PC party presidency in Ontario, and they stuffed the ballot box. We had, for round figures, we had 1,000 paid registered delegates, and yet there was like 1,300 and some votes in the box. Go figure. So you cannot investigate a political party in Canada. So then Jim got that, and then Belinda got ousted when Bill 195 the first time was read. She got ousted. Then Jim ran for the leadership of the party, of the for what would you call it, for the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party at the federal level. He ran for that. But Walid Solomon, who's a Muslim and was advisor to O'Toole, right? This is the same guy who was advisor to Brown. What was his name? Patrick Brown.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a big time pusher of the Sharia financing on Bay Street in Toronto. So Jim wrote an op-ed on Walid Solomon and Sharia financing and published it. And when he did, the 9-person unelected leadership candidacy people received a letter from the O'Toole campaign. O'Toole says he denies it, but we have a copy of the letter. What happened was O'Toole's campaign wrote a letter to the 9-person committee, and they threw Jim out of the race. Basically, just threw him. How do we get back in? He was going to get back in, and they turned around and sued him. Like, we had collected $300,000, right? We had gone out and saved and come up with $300,000. We come up with the signatures. They fined him $100,000, right? And in order for him to get his money, the other $200,000 to pay his people, he had to sign a letter of it's not I think it's non-disclosure or a non-interference or something, that he wouldn't go against them. And at the time, he was dealing with cancer. I didn't, like, everybody goes, well, Jim uses this cancer as a ploy. No, he doesn't. I was close to him. I didn't even know he had cancer. He had already had the surgery in his femur and in a new knee before I ever knew he had cancer.
Well, so I will comment that he did look quite ill for some time. Like,
he was pretty darn sick, but he wouldn't quit. He wouldn't give up. And so basically, so then we have the Bluebirdies starting up, and it's registered, and we get everything going. And out of the blue, at a Henry Hildebrand. If you guys don't know Henry Hildebrand, you know Pastor Hildebrand. He's a
Of the Church of
wonderful-
God in Elmer, yes, the
Yeah.
church that was targeted relentlessly through the pandemic and fined repeatedly and demonized.
$1,000.
Yeah.
$274,000 he got fined. But when you meet Henry and meet his son Herbert, you're not going. They're amazing. So Henry, November 6th and 7th in Nathan Phillips Square, we had a rally, and the 7th was understood that was Henry's Sunday service, but he did ask a few people to speak. Right, well, obviously you keep it within the parameters of a service, but Randy Hillier got up, surrounded by people with purple PPC flags, all rolled up, and announced the new Ontario First Party. He didn't even call it that; he called it the Purple Wave. And we're trying to sign people up right there at that meeting. And I know Pastor Hildebrand was disgusted that his Sunday service was hijacked for doing that. And then Bernier come out and backed Hillier. So answer me this question, because this is this question I ask everybody on all social media. Why would you do that? Why, when there's a party with a sitting member MP, which is Belinda Carra-Elliott, who voted every time she had the chance, she voted against Doug Ford in the BCs, to where she got kicked out of the party. 19 members of the Cambridge riding got booted out. And so why would you start a new party up? Like if you're against Doug Ford, why would you start a new party up and divide the vote between the New Blue and the First Party? Then along comes Sloan and starts another third party. He didn't start it. He tried to resurrect the party from 2018. So I'll give Derek this. He tried to start a federal party too. That was pretty funny. But I'll give Derek this. At least he's reached out and we're talking with Derek. And something might come of this. We're not sure yet. But I sent emails, texts, phone calls to Bernier to ask him, why are you backing Hillier with what he's doing? And never got an answer. He was completely incommunicado. He went to Florida and he stayed in Florida. And when he came back, he made a big announcement that he was backing Hillier. Backing what? What are you backing? You're backing a party who couldn't even get enough signatures to officially get registered. So all it does is cause confusion in the minds of the everyday voter. It just causes contention because people don't like to see parties fight, right? Who wants to see political parties fight, especially if they're all on the same deck of the ship, so to speak? And that didn't seem to bother her. I could say things about Hillier that I wouldn't give you 30 cents for him. I wouldn't pick him up if he was hitchhiking. That's pretty bad. I picked up a lot of people.
I have
Well,
my.
so-
Go
Go ahead, Brandon.
please.
No, you go.
Go ahead.
All right,
The floor is yours.
The floor is mine. I have all due respect for Randy Hillier and Maxime Bernier for many different reasons, but I think you hit the nail on the head there when you're talking about how we have all of this stuff going on in our provincial politics, and now we have all these parties fighting over each other. There's no unity there, and for that reason, I'm sticking with this. I'm predicting it. Rick Walker's hating me for it, but I predict a Doug Ford minority government this coming.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money trading hands. Hillier gets like 237 or 264 a vote. Like they change things around so that I think the NDP gets 5 million. Yeah, they change things around. It's actually all written down in one of my posts that shows where these guys, like the New Blue doesn't get anything, but these people all get money. I'll give you an example. The top spokesman for the convoy, who is a good friend of mine, him and I walked over to the Marriott in Ottawa to a media scrum, which my way, I think everybody should be ID'd and no masks and you show your ID before you wouldn't have your picture taken. But as soon as I walk through the door, I see a guy named Jim Torma with a white hat with the PPC writing on it, standing there. And as soon as I saw him, I said to Tom, this is hijacking. We're going to get ambushed. And he said, what do we do? I said, well, I'll talk to Don Quiglin. So I talked to Don Quiglin, and Don said, hey, so I'm going to tell him something about this PPC Act. Truckers couldn't stand the PPC. They wouldn't wipe their feet with it. They were so frustrated with them trying to do this political, make it a political thing, right? And yet really do nothing in the long run. So when the lawyer stood up to speak, and I think Tamara and Danny Bolford and a couple others spoke, during just near the end of it, these I think one of them were Global and the other one was CDV. Sorry, Rick. They started screaming out, like, what about the money and who's got the money and where's the money going and all this stuff. So Lawrence, smart, just walked out. He just walked out, him and the speakers. But Jim Dorma stayed behind, screaming in these people's faces, there are no firearms. There are no firearms. It's like where does this come from? And tried to talk to them and a number of times and said, why don't you guys pack your bags and go home? Just pack your bags and go away. The truckers don't want you here. Just go away. But it's like talking to the block wall. They just don't listen.
Well, that's the thing about politics, right? Like whenever a political party tries to come to power, is they always jump in front of whatever parade that is there at the time, and they try to sort of lead it.
Here's kind of a challenging question for you, though, Jack. I mean, on the one hand, you're saying you want the politicians to come down and meet with the truckers. You wanted Pierre Poilievre to come down. You wanted the Conservatives. The PPC was there. Randy Hillier was there. They did a pancake breakfast, as I recall. Here's the other, challenge for Canadians. It's like you have three parties that are basically, very close in political ideology today: Conservatives, Liberals, NDP. And then you have these other smaller parties. And like the only real challenger seems to be the PPC at the federal level. So if not the PPC, what choice do Canadians have? Because it doesn't seem to me like the Conservatives have offered any kind of a solution to any of the problems we've been facing for the past couple of years. I'll throw it out to you. Where does that leave us then?
Well, I think first we have to take back Ontario. I think we need to forget about the federal politics right now. Don't even give it a second thought. I think we need to focus on driving Doug Ford and his band of cohorts and crooks and liars and thieves out of Queen's Park. We need to get somebody in there and Jim talks about it. He did day one and he still does. Accountability, transparency, integrity, honesty, all these things, right? He wants to knock all the mandates out. All mandates are gone and legislation put in place that it can never, ever be done again. And we need to start that at the Ontario level. And then like a domino effect, it'll go across the country.
But at the Ontario level, provincially in Canada, we have a lot of people in the U.S. and even around the world watching tonight. So we're talking right now provincially in Ontario, where there's an election coming up this summer.
In June.
Yeah, in June. To me, it's a mess because you have the Conservative side split up between the new Blue Party, which is new. You have the Ontario Party. You have the three main brands: the NDP, the Progressive Conservatives, and the New Democrats, who are the traditional three that people normally vote for and likely will again because they tend to vote just for brands, right, and out of habit. It just seems like a mess because it seems like the three main parties are all basically on the same page. Doug Ford is going to be there running for his party again as premier, so he's not going to be gone. So what's the choice? I don't know. Ontario is a big mess. I don't see any hope in Ontario at all.
I share Rick's sentiments about that heavily.
I think, I'm putting my faith in the new Blue. I'm the president of the EDA here in Durham, and we just found a candidate. I'll probably meet with him tomorrow. I'm putting my faith in New Blue at the provincial level. And I think that I like Derek Sloan. I met Derek at Queen's Park after he spoke and walked up to him and said, "You just said that you were willing to talk to people." And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Are you being serious?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, we need to talk." And one of his guys, he took my number, and one of his guys contacted me, and now we're going to have him and Jim and the parties talk. I like Derek Sloan. There's something about Derek. I thought he pulled a bonehead stunt when he started that federal party. But then again, like I said earlier, mutual respect. Nobody's perfect. Like if I sit down and I have a chance to talk to him, I'll probably find I might have done the same thing. But I like Derek, and he's got some good people behind him. He's got good people supporting him, and a lot of people like Derek. There's just something about him. And I think between him and Jim, that they'll come up with, between the New Blue and the Ontario Party, I think they'll work something out. But people need a change in Ontario. This is, the fact that Ontario would bring out the War Measures Act and the other stuff that Doug Ford has done shows he's not a leader. He's a knee-jerk opportunist that spoiled, rotten, has too much money in his pocket. Like some people tell me he made $33 million in the first quarter of the pandemic with his sticker on the floor business or whatever he's got. Others tell me $74 million. I don't think it matters. I think if I was in that leadership position, I'll bet you would say the same thing. And you had a company making those stickers, you'd recuse yourself from making any decision that's going to affect your business, which you're not. That would be the honest thing to do, right? Step away from your business, whatever. And he didn't do that.
So, sorry, Brendan, did you have a question?
Oh, no, go ahead, Rick. What were you going to say?
So that let's just look ahead here a little bit now with the truckers. What do you think comes next? Because I know that's really what people are wondering. Like, it's what happens now? You say you're not going away. I see all these little protests kind of happening across the country. There was a call right after things broke up in Ottawa for some sort of a strike to happen.
Yeah.
It didn't seem to materialize at all, which didn't surprise me. So what do you hear? What's going on in the background? And I'm sure that some of the stuff you don't want to reveal or tell people about, if you know of any, but what can you tell people to kind of bring people up to date? What's happening and what's going to happen?
Well, really, in a nutshell, we're not going away. We have plans. We have strategies. They declared war on us. Now it's our turn. And we don't fear them. They can take whatever they want. We're not afraid of a bunch of sock boys and a bunch of spoiled, rotten brats who should have had their butts kicked when they were kids and taught self-respect, or not just respect, but taught self-respect, right? They should have had all that done to them when they were kids. Now maybe it's time to do it. And we'll do it. We'll do it in our own way. We have our own strategies, our own techniques. Obviously, I'm not going to reveal any of it because that would be a huge mistake. But we put it this way: they've bitten off more than they can chew.
It seems to me that the truckers sort of went to battle with everything stacked against them, and yet still achieved a lot. To go up to Ottawa and even to the border points in the dead of winter and sit there the way they did, it just seemed like they were just, like you said, sitting ducks. And yet look at what they achieved, and look at the way the country came together behind them. I mean, that was the reality. It was a national moment, in my view. It was a high point in Canadian culture that will go down in history as being something that should really be written into the history books, something that Canadians can be proud of. And Justin Trudeau just couldn't have that. So he had to turn it into this ugly thing where he sent in his goons and his thugs to turn this beautiful expression of Canadian pride into something gross and disgusting and violent. Not coming from the truckers, coming from his goons.
he's never had a thought of his own. You know that, eh? He's never had a thought of his own. His father embedded into him all the ideologies of what I call the ideology of stupidity, right? I doubt if he's ever had a callus on his hands unless it's from self-abuse. The boy is just, if he was my son, he would not have turned out that way. Like, no common sense, no cognitive thinking. Like, he's just a headpiece, figurehead, a mouthpiece for Klaus Schwab and George Soros and Bill Gates. And by my way, I would seize all the Gates, Schwab's, and Soros's assets in Canada. I would take their passports and visas. I would issue an international arrest warrant, and I would have them brought in, do a forensic audit on them, and find out what parts have they played in this, and what influence has their money played. Same with that little Zuckerberg or whatever his name is for Facebook.
Mark Zuckerberg.
That boy would be on trial so fast as his head would spin for the $390 million he handed out on the eastern seaboard from Connecticut all the way down to New Jersey. He handed out to all the Democratic voting booths, right? Everybody on the street knows it. The only problem is we have a judicial system. Well, look at Hillary. Enough said. Comey, any of them. People asked me what I thought of that. And I said, you don't realize the deep state in Canada has been here for 100 years before it went to the U.S. The deep state in Canada has been here a lot longer than the U.S. It's embedded much deeper. So,
Donald Trump came out at his CPAC speech this week, talked about the Canadian truckers, and what he said blew me away. I didn't expect that at all when I watched that speech. Did that? Do you think that inspired the freedom movement? And I thought it put new wind into the sails a little bit up here. What do you think?
Well, he hurt himself when he promoted the vaccines. He's sitting there talking about, I got both shots. I got the booster. I'm getting the next booster. He lost credibility. So anything he says now is subject to, doubt. Like I liked him. Right. I stayed up until he was elected that night. But he and his wife and family are amazing. I did some hauling for the Trump Corporation out of New Jersey, and I think they're amazing family. But I think he hurt himself with that saying he supported the vaccines.
No doubt, yes.
Yeah, but other than that, I used to go by Norfolk, Virginia, and they have the aircraft carriers parked there. When you're driving, you can see them. I remember seeing that he was Ronald Reagan, and then after Trump made his promises. The next thing you know is that, you almost walk across the water on aircraft carriers. I mean, the guy kept his promise. He put life into the military. He put life into the country. Because I hauled mostly into the U.S. I saw it firsthand. I saw people fearful about being deported. And I used to tell them, hey, if you're doing an honest day's job, if you have an honest day's work and you're not involved in crime, I said, I wouldn't be the least bit worried about you. He'll give you a portal to maybe pay a fine or pay back taxes a little bit. You know what I mean? Something that's fair and reasonable. And I think he was prepared to do that. Because you don't put out good workers. I mean, they're in there and they got families, and he wasn't that type of guy that would do that. But
what was your view on the protests at the border points at the Ambassador Bridge this time, and in Coots? What do you think?
Well, the one in Ambassador Bridge, as soon as you block the emergency access lane, you deserve whatever you get. Like, I'm not taking away from the guys who did it necessarily, but you can't block egress lanes. You get the emergency egress. You can't do that. And same with Coots. Coots would have been fine if the RCMP hadn't tried to strong arm them and the farmers come in. But even there, they know you have to have the emergency lane open. It could be one of the police officers' family. It could be your child, your grandson, my grandson being rushed to hospital. And the moments that it takes to get through that mess, I mean, that could be the minutes that he dies. You should never block all. I don't even believe in truck stopping for any length of time. I think they should be moving. Even the ones we had at Fort Erie, we used to rotate them in and rotate them out. We'd tell guys, hey, go on, go pull a load, go get a load. Other guys would come in and park. You got to make money.
Right. You don't want to set yourself up in a position of weakness, right?
No, and as soon as you block the lane, as soon as you blockade, you're in that. We had 2 spots in Ottawa one in particular that blockaded, and that gave them the what you call it? They gave them the information that they could apply to the court and say we're under siege, we're blockaded. One was under the mayor's apartment. There's kind of a video. There's a douchebag if you ever met one. Him and that Steve Bell, the interim police chief, getting up there and saying that he's going to hunt us down and he's going to ruin our careers. He's going to ruin our business. It's like, you've watched too many movies, Steve. You've just watched too many. I don't know. Name a movie. There's so many stupid movies today. He's just watching too much of Hollywood, and he doesn't realize what real life is all about.
And we've seen some of the truckers recover some of their rigs in the past week, but they left the windows down on their rigs. They were filled with snow inside.
That would hurt them.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a nuisance, really.
Yeah, I've seen us like in a really dirty job, just pull up and take the power hose and power wash the inside of the truck out. It takes a little while to dry it. Use what do you call it? Like a vacuum shop vac. You suck 99% of the water out, and then you put a fan in there and it blows it out. There's nothing they're going to do to us that's going to hurt us. That hasn't already been done someday, somewhere. You know what I mean?
Is there support for the truckers who are facing fines, legal challenges?
Yes. Yeah. I had a guy, names will obviously be withheld, but I had a guy that when they said that they were releasing the trucks, it was $1,200 a semi, $600 a four-wheeler. And I had an individual that him and I talked, and he took quite a bit of money. He took enough to pay for all 39 trucks. And what he does is they have to pay the check, sort of like check to the city of Ottawa, and then he would reimburse them right there. And the ones that didn't get reimbursed there will be reimbursed later. They're all tracked and they can file their paperwork. A lot of guys went home paying for their own fuel. They paid for at least $3,900 one way for one truck I know, and then he had to turn around and go home. But he'll keep his receipts, and when we get the money released, we'll get him his money. That's guaranteed.
So I have to ask you about this one. BJ Dichter has pretty much fallen off the face of the planet, except for a few tweets here and there. What's going on with that, or what's the story with that? If you're able to share anything.
Never met him. The only thing I know about him is Jeremy McKenzie. What do you call him? The disgruntled whatever.
The raging dissidents. Yeah.
Oh, whatever. They should call him the disgruntled military guy, because he came out and announced. He's got this important information about Tamara Lich and BJ Dichter and Dagny, but I think her last name is Paula. And he's going to give us all this information about how they were connected to Mirko Messino. BJ, I think is LBGQ or something. Who gives a rat's ass what he is? You go by results. And then and Tamara was something else, liberal, some kind of flunky or something for the liberals. But we never saw anything to show us that. I never saw anything. Dagny did everything she could to help us out. I confronted her on the elevator the very morning that was released, and I said, "Is it true you were the campaign manager for Marco Mendocino?" And she said, "Well, yeah." And she said, "Really, I was his finance guy." And I told her, I said, "You need to distance yourself from that and do a live feed and make it public." And then later in the day, I saw her. I said, "Come here," and I gave her a hug, and I said, "You forget about that, what I said." I said, "I go by what I see. and all I seen Dagny do was work her butt off. Like she run the stage and she was doing all kinds of stuff, and then she moved up to a higher position, but she did nothing but work and work hard on behalf of the drug drivers. So,
And you were on the ground there in Ottawa. Give me your assessment of the way police ultimately handled things.
well, if you're talking about the Ottawa police, the vast majority of the Ottawa police that were on the ground when I first got there were absolutely ladies and gentlemen. They were wonderful. They smiled, they laughed, they were great community liaison persons. The people that come down from Toronto, Niagara, Hamilton were all the same. They were friendly. They laughed. They shared jokes. I talked to one sergeant for 35 minutes, and we just laughed ourselves silly, And he said, "My job is just to keep the peace. So I don't want anybody here hurt. Nobody." And you got to remember, we had Antifa when they put us out of our hotel rooms at the Marriott and some of the other hotels. They filled them with Antifa, right? So we had 75 to 150 Antifa running around at night, damaging trucks, spray painting, cut the tires off one guy's truck, like just causing aggravation. And the police then didn't do anything. It was a different group. And these goons in the green jumpsuits, have you seen them with a number on the helmet? They think they can't be tracked. I mean, they have to be morons to think that we don't know who they are. And then we have the RCMP. We had one of our guys hack into the RCMP telephone system, and they got all the messages going back and forth between, with the names of the officers. I mean, they're dense, they really are. But no, the vast majority of the Ottawa police were decent. They really were. Now, the mistake that was made is that they sent Fang Lee, I think his name was, the sergeant, and then he sent a guy named Lou as his sidekick to negotiate with the leadership, and that's all that ever showed up. Right, that's all that ever showed up was those two. Like the second day we were there in '89, we were in that house on the second day, and so that it's not a mistake. No mistakes were made. It's like I told the leadership, nobody made mistakes. It was just a learning curve. Everybody learns, right? And there was no one to blame. Chuck Berry, remember the Gong Show? You remember the show?
I do remember.
Gong Show? Okay.
Yeah, I remember the Gong Show. Yeah.
He was a genius, man, that guy.
Yeah.
So he did the Gong Show, and I think the other one he did was Hollywood Squares or something. He wrote a book called You and Me, Babe, and on the inside cover it says, "Never live a would've, should've, could've life. Never live a life of regrets. We have nothing to be ashamed of," is what took place in Ottawa. What amazed me, when they called me for counsel, I said, "You'll never get Canadians complaining or protesting unless you lock them out of the Scotiabank Arena on NHL night." That's the only time. And yet these Canadians, truckers and all, I mean, they bobtailed 4,400 kilometers across ice-covered roads to come to Ottawa. And Canadians, general Canadians, non-truckers, slept in their cars, right? Some of them with no heat because they couldn't afford to put gas in their cars. They slept in their vehicles and shivered around fires at night to stay warm. And like you were saying earlier, I think it has awakened in this country something that had been dead or at least asleep for a long time. And that's the brotherhood and sisterhood of Canadians. Like I never, my rib cage, oh help me God, my rib cage was sore from getting the hugs because I wore an identity vest, right? With my name on it. Somebody said, "What are you doing with the vest?" And I said, "Well, if the cops stop me, I told them I've got Alzheimer's." And the kids made me wear the vest with my name on it. But no, we were literally hugged to death. I mean, people just said it up blue. This one guy, he had to be 6'5". He picked me up. I thought he was going to break all my ribs. He just started hugging and swinging me and saying how proud he was to be Canadian. And we hadn't seen that in a long, long time. But it's back. And in business, they talk about the 6-month curve or the 3-month curve. You do something here, you see no results. It's like flying a helicopter. You ever fly a helicopter?
No,
So
I've
when
never
you
flown a helicopter.
No, so when you pull on your stick, right? When you pull on the stick, you get a delayed reaction because you have to change vertical to horizontal, and it takes seconds. So if you've never flown one, people have a tendency to pull, nothing happens, so they go the other way. Meanwhile, a helicopter is starting to go backwards. That's how they crash. And that's the same thing here. The action takes place here, but down the road is when you see the reaction. And we've seen plenty of action or reaction from what we did, but you haven't seen the brunt of it against Trudeau and against these lackeys, these people. You haven't seen it. Jagmeet Singh, as God is my witness, he will not remain the leader of that party. And I doubt he will even be allowed to run any party ever. Because Tommy Douglas, if nobody else, would be rolling over in his grave.
Well, the NDP is not the party that it used to be, right?
No.
The NDP has been corrupted.
Bob Rae started that. Bob Rae started the destruction of the NDP.
The NDP
Can you talk more about that?
Well, Rae, a woman I was married to actually ran as the federal candidate before I met her. She ran as the federal candidate and a provincial candidate for the NDP at one time. And so she convinced me that Bob Rae was a nice person. And so I voted for him. We voted for him and we voted for his party. And I think it was in the first 3 days, some woman named Mary Smith or some whatever her name was, changed her name to Huliala or whatever, like her African name. Like weird stuff started to happen. Bob Phillips was his Minister of Transport. And I sat in his office in University Avenue. And I told him, I said, "You, sir, are a stupid man." And he said, "Why would you say that?" And I said, "Because," I said, when you have the intellect and the resources to apply a solution to a situation and you fail to do so due to procrastination or just corruptness or for whatever reason, I said, "You're a stupid person." And you, sir, I said, "are a stupid person because you have all the answers, you have all the solutions to the situation, but you're failing to apply them." And they didn't. You saw how long they stayed in power, right, with the Rae days.
Yeah, that was a disaster.
Oh, yeah. They couldn't even hold party status. And when the Conservatives go out, they'll go the same way. When we oust them, they won't even have party status. I doubt it.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the NDP used to be the party of the working class, and it used to be truckers that and other working class people that formed the backbone of that party. But it seems like they have completely abandoned that base.
I would have loved to see Jack Layton become premier or prime minister. Jack Layton, to me, had a head full of common sense. He had a good heart. Everybody I ever met that met Jack Layton liked him. He was down to earth. He was just this. Everybody liked him. And then the other one was Ed Broadbent out in Oshawa. Ed Broadbent represented. He was the NDP candidate in Oshawa. And if you needed a job, you would phone Ed Broadbent's office, and within 3 to 5 days, you'd be working. Never failed, ever failed. He always found a man a job. He was an amazing human being. But those days are gone. Who's their name? What's her name in Ontario with the NDP? I can't think of it. I have a tendency to forget dumb people's names. Elizabeth May, that's not her, is it? That's
no. She's the Green Party federally.
Yeah, same boat.
Oh, Andrea Horvath?
That's her.
Right.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Hey, did you guys watch that? I think she was a liberal woman out of Toronto who said Hong Kong was synonymous with Sig Heil.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
we even put it up on the show. You know what? We could put it back up on the show here now.
But that's what these radicals do, though. They twist language. They turn definitions. They attach new definitions to things, and they turn the world upside down that way, and it's insane.
Well, you imagine they do this in schools. I'll give you an example. I had a grandmother who had a little boy. I first met him when he was 2. She signed him over to me when he was like 7 and a half. She gave me legal custody. That's her. She gave me legal custody over the little guy. And they had him on Ritalin. And the first thing I did was take him off Ritalin and put him on a good diet of vegetables and fruits and good foods and no sugar. But the school he went to, at Mackenzie Smith Bennett in Acton, the lineup for Ritalin in the morning was like 7 to 15 minutes. They handed Ritalin to children. And in the hallway, they had a pop dispenser with a Hawaiian fruit punch. Like a Hawaiian, what do you call it? Yeah, I think they call it. Yep. It's a red colored drink. Yep. Anybody who knows anything about psychotropics, or what we call SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, anybody who knows about that knows that any red dye, whether it's tomato or Hawaiian fruit punch especially, will set a child off into a psychotic episode with no issue whatsoever. They can't control themselves. She's
You want to let this roll, Brendan?
Yeah, let's play it.
Okay.
How many guns need to be seized? How much vitriol do we have to see of honk honk, which is an acronym for Hail Hitler, do we need to see by these protesters on social media?
Well, not just that. She goes Hail Hitler. It wasn't Hail Hitler. It's Heil Hitler. She doesn't even know. How does she get in? How does she get into politics?
Well, actually, she is of Jewish heritage. I can't remember what her name is, but I'll find it for us in here in a moment.
You know what the sad thing is, though, Jack? There are a lot of people out there who will buy into that.
Well, that's because they don't think either.
That's right. And it's scary. It's scary.
My oldest boy.
I think she is thinking. I don't think that a lot of these people are as stupid as we say they are. I think they know that they're manipulating language. I think they know what exactly they're doing. This minister, for example, is Yaira Sachs, and she has a history where she has gone to all the best universities and has gone to school for diplomacy and other things in Jerusalem. I think that they're manipulating things. I think they know that they're manipulating things. Justin Trudeau, we could call him stupid all day and night, but at the end of the day, he knows the policies that he wants to implement, and he's going to act stupid so that he could say, oh, well, these are just a bunch of misogynist, racist, and terrorist, and that sort of thing. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's dividing. And so same with her. Same with her.
It still makes them stupid.
Yeah, it does.
It does. It makes them stupid. If you walk, here's the analogy I use. If you go down a tree-lined road in the farm country, right? You go down a tree-lined road where the branches overhang the road, and you hang your naked butt out the window. Don't complain to me when it gets all stretched up. You know what I mean? You're a stupid person. And that's what Justin Trudeau is. That's what Doug Ford is. Kean Moore. And, here he has got shares. He's on the board with the Lyme for Pfizer. He's on the Lyme tick disease board for Pfizer. What's her name? Cruella DeVille or whatever her name is, Toronto Board of Health doctor. These people are just stupid. If they think they're going to push and push and push and push and not get pushed back, that's just plain stupidity. I know they think they know where they're going, but they have no idea where they're going. None.
Well, I will give the second analogy, so it could be just as well as the first one. I'll give the second one. Is it possible that these people are so far above in their ivory towers that they're so disconnected from the blue-collar working class? Is that a second possibility?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I call them intellectual idiots. They get in their little clubs and they get in their little pat me on the back. Like, there's an old thing that says never buy into your own publicity. Yeah. They belong to, they have their own club of publicity. right? They just spend all day patting themselves on the back with their genius ideas. And if you watch the media, unfortunately, how many new words have been started by the media in CNN and MSNBC or whatever the hell, NBC or whatever you call it, with that's I don't know how they're allowed to operate. Why they're just not shut down.
I want to share something with you right now. A comment from somebody, because I want to contrast what we saw in Ottawa, how we handle things here, and how people who don't like us deal with us. And you say there are stupid people out there. This is from somebody who calls themselves Nova Zirconius. And there's their comment. And they keep pushing this into the comments over and over and over again. So there you go. That's their response.
Yeah, but that's funny. I think it's hilarious because what it is, it's like people wear MMFI on their forehead. It says, make me feel important, right? And other people put stickers on it says, I'm as stupid as a block of concrete. That's right. I mean, if people who have no intellect, people who have no intellect whatsoever, like thinking, like what I call common sense. Common sense is a foreign language today. And people who can't speak the language, I find it quite funny. And what I do as a hypnotist is I climb inside people's heads like this and I make them have bad dreams. Sorry.
Well, you know what? This shows us that we're on the right path here with what we're doing and the things that we are pursuing. You can really piss this Nova guy off even more. Be sure to like and subscribe our channel and hit the bell for notifications. I think this is an excellent time to promote that. And we could continue to piss people like Nova off, and we'll continue to have a really good time.
That was brilliant, Brendan.
Yeah, he's a true intellect, isn't he? This guy, yeah. Oh, he's still going at it too. It's like over and over and over again. Just
so anyway. Here's what you do. You try to figure out. Okay, one time I saw a picture of an obese man naked, sitting sideways, right, with an ashtray on his belly and a beer in one hand and a cigar in his mouth. Hi, my name is Lily. I'm a 10-year-old girl. And underneath that, it said, you never know who you're talking to on the internet. So when I get that type of stuff sent to me, I try to figure out, I try to keep them going, keep them leading until they reveal their age. You're definitely doing something right. When you get parasites like that groupies that hang on to try to get their fame, you're doing something right.
Yeah, well, we're getting more and more of it. So I guess we're definitely over the target.
Well, I hear there's employment in Ukraine for people like Nova. He's more than welcome there.
Oh, my.
Maybe
which kind of brings me to another thing, Jack. It's like the whole truckers movement, the freedom movement, it was focused. The truckers were looking to end the mandates, the medical mandates. But it seems to me that there's a whole lot more at stake. Do you think that what's your
up a little bit?
Sorry, I'll repeat myself. The truckers went to Ottawa and to other points across Canada to end the medical mandates. But it seems to me there's a lot more at stake than that. It's the issues go far beyond that. It really does come under this whole umbrella of freedom, right? What is your view? It's about the country, it's about Canada. Do we still have you there? It looks like maybe you froze. I think maybe we might even have lost Jack.
Uh-oh.
I think maybe we've lost him. Definitely he's frozen. That's why we broke up there. He'll be back, I expect.
That's okay.
What do you think of that, Brendan? Is it about more than just medical mandates at this point?
It is about freedom because we have had the government infringe on our autonomy. And that's one of the principles of where we live and where we come from is this medical autonomy. Nobody ever cared in the past 30 years if people were declining blood transfusions. Nobody ever cared. And it was taught to medical staff that they're not to be judgmental or preachy about it. So we have had, for beyond 30 years, people who have said, oh, I'm not going to take this blood transfusion that will save my life, even if it kills me, and because it goes against what I believe, and people had to respect that. And you could say, oh, well, that means that they were being selfish, and you know what, maybe it is in some ways, but it doesn't matter, because they had the fundamental right to say no. And then we have this propped up master in Ottawa who said, don't think that you could sit on a plane or a train with somebody who is unvaccinated. Disgraceful. It goes against the core values of Canada. Even from Justin Trudeau himself, who had said Canada is not a country that makes vaccination mandatory. And that is verbatim quote. I've seen him say that in that video so many times. He understood that, but he still used this to divide Canadians. So we need to get Canada back on track with our core values being intact. Some people don't believe in those core values, but I tell you, Jack, and I tell you, Rick, I believe in those core values.
So maybe you missed the question there, Jack, because things broke up, but it's do you think that there's more at stake than just for the truckers? They went there looking to end the medical mandates, but it seems to me it evolved into something where the stakes were much higher than that. It seems like they really were at the end fighting for the country.
Absolutely. I went there as an advisor to some people that asked me to go there, and I brought 2 posters, 4-foot square posters. One was the picture of Sean Hartman. He was 17 years old. And the other one was his story on the poster. He had started playing hockey at 8 years of age. And then he took a year off for COVID. This is a kid who didn't put salt on his food, didn't drink ginger ale, like any type of pop or beverages. He was very careful of what he ate, of his health. And this is a kid that was moving towards the NHL. He took a year off when he was 17 to just take a break because of COVID. And then finally he really, really wanted to go back and play hockey. And they signed his, well, I call his death certificate, basically. They signed his certificate for him to get a shot on the 27th of August. And he wasn't feeling good after the shot. And sometime after that, they sent him to the clinic or the emergency room. They gave him, what do you call that? It's just a mild painkiller, headache pill. Starts with an A. It doesn't matter. They gave him like aspirin.
Acetaminophen.
Yeah, actually, something like that. I'm going to pull up the Sean Hartman story from the Toronto public health.
You know what, though, guys? Here's the thing. We need to be careful about talking about too much of this COVID stuff because YouTube came after us today, and we need to set this up on other platforms. So we just be careful how you phrase this.
Oh, yeah.
Because otherwise, the thought police will come and arrest us all before we have a chance to get on these other platforms.
Well, he basically was found dead next to his bed, and the autopsy said it was unascertained. And then the second pathologist said that his career was on the line if he said anything. But now there's a third pathologist who has European connections that are going to do the investigation. They very well may come up and find that it wasn't the inoculation. That'll be up to them. That's where it stands now. But that's what committed this too, is that it's called, oh my God, hug or bear hug. Yeah, it's called mama bears. Did you hear about Mama Bears? Yeah. So it's called, a friend of mine is the Canadian chairman of that, chairperson of it. And so Mama Bears tries to educate families that, not now, it doesn't have to be now. Like, in other words, educate yourself before you go ahead and vaccinate your children. They don't tell them, don't vaccinate them. They don't tell them that. They just say, educate yourself before you make the decision.
Yeah, and a little bit of common sense sort of tells us what's likely happened in the case of the Hartman story, and it's extremely sad. And we will be talking about that more in the future as we're able to. So I appreciate what you're saying there, Jack, and it needs to be explored more. I know that the story has come out, and more and more people are becoming aware of it. And the numbers don't lie, the stats don't lie. If you can read a graph, if you can find the information, which is easily out there, and we'll have more of it on this program, the government can't hide all of this forever. It's coming out. It's coming out now.
And it's coming out hard. I'll just say something here generically about the Hartman story. We won't play it here today, but this is the supreme example of the political correctness associated around this issue when this poor man is at a public health meeting and he tells his story and nobody offers to help him and nobody offers to look into further answers for it because it's all politically correct field censorship. It's disgraceful.
Yeah. And it took we put him on in the morning. He pulled over to the side of the road in that snowstorm and he sat there for 2.5 hours waiting to do a 5-minute presentation. And even then he would have sat there for 3.5 hours if a friend of mine who was scheduled to speak as number 4 and the dad was scheduled for number 10. And if he had to wait the 10th spot, he would have been there another hour and more. But she gave up her spot and let him speak. And to her credit, KWT, Kristen Wong Tam, who had been ousted as the deputy chair of the Board of Health. She'd been ousted because she had written an article to the Toronto Sun called "Divisiveness versus Discourse versus Divisiveness." In other words, let's talk it out. And they booted her. The Toronto Star, who's, as far as I'm concerned, about as communist paper as you can get anywhere in the world. The Toronto Star did 4 articles in retaliation and demanded her ouster. And so then Cruella de Villa, we call her that. Cruella de Villa put pressure on frat boy. What's his name? I have a tendency to forget names of people I don't like. I can't think of his name. The chairperson of the board he's just another Justin Trudeau, right? He just does what he's told. So he ousted Kristen. But to her credit, she asked a couple of good questions when Dan was done. But there's a lot of left people on that board. And I'm not talking left, I'm talking left.
Yeah. That's the biggest problem with many institutions in Canada and in Ontario, that they have pushed so far to the left that it's absolutely insane. And a big part of that is you saw when mask mandates came out across the board, every municipality across Ontario unanimously voted them in.
That shows you who controls them.
Yeah.
Right.
Big time. And there's a place called Chatham-Kent, Ontario in Canada, and they had one of the only chief medical officers of health who said, no, it's not going to work, it's stupid, don't do it. He ultimately flip-flopped on it, but it came down to a local council vote, and he said, no, I don't recommend you do it, and then all the councillors voted for it anyway. So kind of showed the ugly face of what was really happening.
Did you see the video? Did you see the video of the little 5-year-old little girl who comes up to her dad and she's got her head down like she's done something shameful? And he goes, "What's wrong, sweetheart?" And she had taken her mask off, right, because it was itching her or something. She had taken it off, and she thought she was going to get in serious trouble with the school because she did it. I have another young lady that she'd be what, 15, I guess. Her face is nothing but a big rash from having to wear a mask. And they said, "Well, you can wear a shield," and it's like they missed the point. Like they just seem to miss the point.
Yeah.
One thing we saw in Ottawa was how many people said, "My God, your smile is nice." You know what I mean? They were looking at each other and just smiling and showing teeth and everything. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
I think that when we had seen that study come out that said people wearing a mask are shown to be more attractive, I think that was a part of some kind of psyop to mess with people's brains. Because
well, if you think that, what about the one that says we're all in this together? No, yeah, I tell people go, well, because Kmart, what do you call it? Walmart, which I haven't been in months, announced that like every 5 minutes. Remember now, we're all in this together. So I said, I'll tell you what, close your eyes and imagine standing on the deck of the Titanic as it slipped beneath the icy North Atlantic, not far from where I was born. And as it slipped beneath the water, holding hands with all your family and friends saying, we're all in this together. Or walking to the ovens at Dachau or Auschwitz, holding hands saying we're all in this together. Yeah, I mean, it's something that was designed by the psychologists to make you become complacent.
Yes.
To put your brain in neutral.
Yes, and also we could stand together by standing apart. And Rick Walker, that's his favorite one there to talk about. And it makes you sick thinking about it. Absolutely. I can't believe the type of things that they have been putting on people. Almost just about all these catchphrases and buzzwords are basically all conducted by these political think tanks and these special interest groups that come up with this stuff. And it's absolutely sickening. It's across the board in every place in North America. That's where they're coming up with these buzzwords.
Well, I told you I'm a hypnotist and I'm a master of the art of the power of suggestion, what you would call a hypnotist, for 40-some years. I applied for and was accepted in the York University Atkinson College Mature Student Program for a degree in psychology. And when I met with the head of the PhD department there, she asked me why I wanted to become a hypnotist. And I told her that the law at that time stated, it was repealed in 1998, but at that time in 1980, the law was stated you had to be a dentist, an MD, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist to practice, hypnosis or to hang a shingle. And I wanted to work with children in the burn centers and with children having spinal taps, because storybook hypnosis really helps them. My son had open heart surgery, and I used storybook hypnosis when they had to cut him open and drain the fluid off his lungs. And it works, and it's real. But anyway, when I spoke to the head of the department, she said that all the top psychology students were already being wooed and being paid 3 to 4 times what you would get on the street if you would join the advertising firms. Back then it was Raleigh Toys, CCM, Canadian Tire, Rothman's Tobacco, McDonald's Tobacco, and there was a whiskey company I remember too. And all these top students for psychology were going into the advertising departments. And that's where they are today. It's like 680 News after 9/11. 680 News changed their thing to, because the world has changed, you need 680 News. No, I don't. I don't need 680 News unless I want to listen to the weather or the traffic.
Well, we know that the Liberals in the last election and even now have been, did, and are using psychographic polling to guide their campaigns and their policies. And that is scary because it's like it's a giant, they're screwing with people's minds. And I would characterize it, and I'd like your thought on this, Jack. I would characterize it as psychological abuse of the citizens.
Well, I think that I don't read newspapers anymore. I make it a point not to, because they're so full of subliminal suggestion. If you really want to see subliminal suggestion, what you do is take your television, which at one time you used to be able to darken with a button. Now you have to put a cloth over it. But what you do is put a cloth over it and let it play like it normally would. You'd be shocked how many times you'll go over and lift that cloth to see who's saying what's being said. And it's often animation. Animation is one of the biggest ways, like The Simpsons, that you can undermine people's cognitive thinking. You can undermine their morals, their values. And you take the cloth off, turn the sound down, and just watch it. And just watch it like you would normally. And before long, you start picking up on little vignettes that take place in the background, advertising symbols, satanic symbols. There's pornography is all over the screens everywhere you look now. It's everywhere. Buffalo jeans on bulletin boards. It's crazy how much subliminal suggestion is in the advertising, television, radio, media. Netflix is unbelievable with the programs they run. Unbelievable. There's no end to it.
So if one of the things I suggested people might want to watch tonight for is I thought you might have some suggestions for people in the audience. How can they make a difference, get involved? What would you suggest people do?
Well, the first thing is make it time at the kitchen table at dinner time, or like don't get stupid about it. Don't be like Brendan said earlier about being in the family and all you hear is about religion and politics, religion and politics. You get sick and tired. You don't want to be around it. But take a few minutes and don't be afraid to talk to your neighbor over the fence, your guy at work, And I have people that at work that they don't want to talk about important subjects. I just don't bother talking to them. I read a good book. I used to run heavy equipment. I used to make myself a little bench in the soil. And I'd sit there and read a book and grab a nap. And people would come to talk to me and I'd say, unless you're going to talk something important, just go away. I don't want to talk about motorcycles, even though I ride one. I got a big, beautiful Harley. I don't want to talk about, who played hockey last night. I want to talk about the important issues. And then we can talk about other stuff, right? And so you have to set guidelines. You have to set rules at your kitchen table that important issues are allowed to be discussed. If you don't want to take part in it, that's fine. But to sit there and be quiet, eat your meal and listen. Don't be rude or obnoxious. So if mom and dad want to talk about, who's the new deputy mayor being voted in, or who's the new school trustee being thought about, or what's the principal like? Where did he come from? These subjects need to be talked about over our children, our grandchildren, and our lives. And basically, it's just talk. I have 3 T-shirts. They say never talk politics on the front. On the back, they each have an uninformed voter is our greatest asset. And it's signed by 3 different signatures. One is signed the New World Order. The next one is signed the Communist Party. And the next one is signed the Liberal Party. Because keeping people in the dark, keeping people away from knowledge is the key to anything. That's how the Catholic Church, which I grew up Catholic, and I love the Catholic Church because I wouldn't be where I am today without the teaching that I did get. But when the Catholic Church changed from Latin to English, they lost thousands of people. Thousands of people left. Because like someone just said, is this the crap I've been saying for the last 25, 30 years? And they just left. So when you keep them in the dark and you keep them like symbolism or language difference that they don't understand, you can pull the wool over a lot of people's eyes. A lot of people's eyes.
And if you want to help us on the front lines of the information.
You see it in Winnipeg, Saturday morning. What's that?
No, I was just going to let people at home know that if they'd like to support us, you can go to freedomreporters.com to donate. It helps us cover the costs of producing these broadcasts. It also helps us put some reporters into the field. And we are expanding our news operation, and we will be expanding out onto other video platforms, including Rumble, BitChute, Gab, and others, because we're already under attack here on YouTube and Facebook. And as you've seen tonight, but also by the video platforms and the techno giants themselves. So again, freedomreporters.com is where you can donate, or you can go straight to the donation page. There is a hot link in the YouTube and Facebook descriptions. So if you can do that, we'd greatly appreciate it. We are fighting on the front lines of the information war. And that's exactly what it is. It's a war. And, today I know that we are over the target because we're being attacked. And I also know we're making a difference because I received a number of calls today from truckers involved in the People's Convoy in the U.S. And these guys were actually crying because of what they see happening to their country and because of what they've seen happen here in Canada. And we need to find a way to continue to fight peacefully for freedom and to restore our country and our Constitution and the Charter, only bring it back stronger than it was because it clearly failed us in our time of need over the past 2 years. So, yeah, freedomreporters.com is where you can help us so that we can continue to fight. We can't do it without you. And with that, I'll throw it over to Brendan, and maybe you can remind people to subscribe, and then we'll get back to the topic at hand.
All right. Well, definitely, we appreciate all the support everybody has been giving us since we started this journey about, just over 4 weeks ago now. And so please remember to like this video and subscribe for more discussions on what is really happening in the world. And once again, thank you so much for your support. And Mr. McClellan, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you tonight and listen to your points.
And Jack, just again with these truckers in the U.S., from what you're seeing on the screen here, what you've seen happening over the last short while with the People's Convoy, are these guys on the right track? Are they going to, again, have any impact, I guess, not only in the United States, but what do you see with regard to the impact here in Canada from what they're doing?
Well, like I on Trend Loose, like I said, my advice to them was don't park your trucks, 3 to 4 trucks together and slow roll around the beltway and put them in, you put 3 or 4 and then you put 3 or 4 a couple of miles back further and you just do it all around the beltway. And inside of 20 minutes, the beltway is pretty well down to a slow roll. People who don't want to be in it are in it. Everybody's caught up in it. And if a police officer pulls you over, all you do is videotape him and say, if he goes, why are you stopped? All you do is say, well, the car next to me said I had something dragging, or the truck told me I have oil leaking, or I could smell something burning, and for safety, I stopped. So you make sure you record the state trooper or who's ever stopping you and ask him, do you think I should have stopped? Was it a smart thing to do? And see what he says. Because if he goes, well, no, I don't think you should have. Well, that's a career moving upward moving block. He'd be hurting his career, trust me. There isn't anybody out there with a half a brain that would tell you shouldn't stop for a safety issue. And that's all you have to do. And you can just haul your load and go deliver it, and then the next time through hit the next city. And I think we can tank the economy in Canada probably by September at the latest. We can tank the economy in this country. And when you tank the economy, all it's doing, there's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do about it. Not a thing.
But that's sort of the key to it, right? I mean, you need.
I'll add something.
Yeah.
I'll add something here. I really like what I see in this program, and I hope people do donate to you guys. Because I'm going to, as soon as I get off here, I'm going to donate to you guys. I like your format. I like your show.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Myself included. Yeah. Thank
yeah.
you so much.
That means a lot.
Yeah.
That's sort of the key, though, right? Is you need some leverage of some kind. I see a lot of protests. We've seen a lot over the last 2 years, but it's like the government's not listening. And so at some point you need to escalate things. It's like if you go on strike, if workers at a factory go on strike, they picket outside the factory to shut it down by withholding their labor and preventing scabs from getting in. And that's their leverage, is withholding their labor. But if all you can do is like walk around on the street with a Bristol board sign with a slogan you've written on it in a magic marker, there's no real leverage there that you have against the government. So if you're not going to blockade, then a slow roll gives you some of that economic leverage because you're slowing things down. But isn't that really the key? You need something to bargain with. You have to come at it from a position of strength, right? In some way.
Absolutely.
But you
absolutely
can't.
Three trucks can shut down the entire interstate in no time at all.
Yeah, but you need to do it in a way that you don't sacrifice yourself or sacrifice others and end up in jail or worse, right?
Well, no, I mean, with the new 50, remember the 55 speed limit? And with the new governing on the trucks, especially, they're governed at 105 kilometers. And so what happens is if you get on a hill and you can sit next to a truck next to you and you're both doing 105 kilometers, you can drive like 40, 50 miles next to each other. Like one guy doesn't want to back off and the other guy's not going to back off. And you just sit next to each other. It's got nothing to do with anything.
Right.
And what's the cop going to charge you with? What's he going to tell you? Oh, you should have hit the brakes. You're the ones who govern their damn trucks.
Yeah. Do you think the public would? Do you think you would maintain public support doing that, or do you think you might alienate people?
No, you leave that lane open, that emergency access lane. You leave it open, and you don't slow roll all morning. You just do it long enough to get the noticeable effect. Then you roll over and let the cars go to work.
Right.
We're not out to make a statement that we're done with this government. That's what we're done with these mandates.
Right.
And we want legislation in place to make sure that these WEF people do not have influence over us again. In other words, put some 727s or 747s at the end of the runway and tell them you got 72 hours to get your bodies on there with your families and get the hell out of Canada. Go live with George Soros or Klaus Schwab, but leave. You need to leave.
And when you talk about the WEF and Klaus Schwab, I mean, to some people, it's still a conspiracy theory. It's like you talk about the World Economic Forum, and I think to some people, they think it doesn't even exist, but it is a real thing. And do you think people are beginning to wake up to that?
Absolutely. When you have people come out in minus 41 degree temperature, right? Dancing around with no music, just to stay warm. I mean, it drew tears to my eyes when I was speaking on stage. I looked down and I see these bunch of young ladies and guys. They were just bouncing with each other, just trying to stay warm. It was so bitterly cold. And I thought, this is the Canada I want my children to grow up in and my grandchildren to grow up in. It was amazing. Absolutely. And if they'll do that in the winter time, what do you think they'll do in the summertime?
And that's a big part of the equation here too. The warmer weather is coming, and I think that I think it's fair to say that whatever actions we might see next from the freedom movement and truckers in particular, you're likely to come at it from an even stronger position because of the weather alone.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that the whole bunch of them should pack their bags and just go find an island to live on. Like go and pat each other on the back all day, do what they want. And I think there's a high degree, and I've seen this. I told you I'm a hypnotist. I've had to work with people who have experienced it. There's a high degree of pedophilia that takes place in these organizations that seem to think they run the world. I have a supervisor of an intelligence division dealing with trafficking, and the things he told me I wouldn't repeat on this television program, but mandates and vaccines and making money off vaccines. This goes deeper. This goes way deeper, and there's so many victims. There's so many victims you almost can't categorize them and catalog them because there's just too many, and many have given up. Everybody thinks they're telling, the aliens have abducted me stories type things. So,
I would really like to ask this question here that the Ontario Ministry of Transportation
I want to hear that word, Rick and Brendan. They don't want to hear the word pedophilia.
No.
What's that?
Hey, now, Jack, I would like to take this opportunity to ask you, the Ontario Ministry of Transportation has shut down 39 trucking businesses in a crackdown on the Freedom Convoy protest. Do you have any inside knowledge about any of the companies that might have been affected by that or may have been hurt by this? Oh.
Did we lose Jack again? Yeah, I guess we lost him.
Yeah, we lost Jack. No.
The other issue facing truckers right now, and all of us, is rising gasoline and diesel prices. And I know that in BC, in some places, it's well over $1.80 a liter.
Yes.
In many parts around where I live, I saw today it was like $1.55, $1.59 a liter, and it's got to be. That's going to impact everything. That'll affect the prices of everything. And let me ask you that, Jack. Now that you're back. Is maybe a little off topic, but certainly related to truckers and everything kind of going on. Fuel prices are going crazy. I saw gasoline at $1.55. It's like $1.80 something out in BC. Are you still there? Or did we lose you again? No, I think we lost him again. We're losing his feed.
To your point there, Rick, they are expecting gas to go over $2 within the next month, over $2 a liter in Canada.
It seems to me too, Brendan, that anytime something like the war that we're seeing, the unrest in Ukraine, anytime we see that stuff, the government, I think what is going on is they're also using it as an excuse. They're blaming inflation on that and using that as an excuse to allow fuel prices to increase, using it as a scapegoat for rising prices at the grocery store, when the root cause of the inflation that we've been seeing is the massive increase in the printing of money. So we've got a massive increase in the money supply. So
I lost you there for about 2 or 3 minutes. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah, you're back. We were just talking about rising fuel prices, and it's sort of on topic. It's a little bit of a sidebar story, I think, but $1.55 here where I live for a liter of gas. Out in BC, over $1.80. Diesel prices on the rise. How do you think that plays out in this whole scenario? It's got to be hurting truckers. It's going to translate into higher prices for everything. And they're sort of blaming all this inflation right now on the unrest in Ukraine. But it seems to me it's also a combination of that with failed government policies and massive money printing and resulting in more inflation that way. What are your thoughts on that, Jack?
Well, I think anybody with half a brain understands that the government playing around with the fiat system and taking us off the gold system. Matter of fact, I'm just thinking about buying some gold right now. because gold and silver seem to be the only thing that's going to give you security for the long run. These morons playing with the money game, like Trudeau started that, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. He started in '68, we had Beatlemania. You remember that? And then it took
Yeah,
Beatlemania.
Trudeau mania.
And they took, so a guy named Keith the Rainmaker Davies took Pierre Elliott Trudeau and turned him into Trudeau mania. You know, the little MG, the little sports car with the little race. Here's an old bald guy wearing a sports cap with a neckerchief tie. Remember that bell-bottom pants?
Oh, yeah.
And he had this little hottie named Maggie Sinclair, you know, this little hot thing that he was, you know, it was just, and he was going to be the Pied Piper that was going to take us all off to euphoria. And yeah, he took us off to euphoria, all right. He was printing money literally 24 hours a day, putting money into the welfare system and putting money into the unemployment system and building low-income housing and just give them away basically to people, right? There's people on the beach in Florida open drinking good whiskey and swimming, all on UI out of Canada. Believe me, there were lots of them. I worked in Florida for a couple of years. I met lots of them, and in the course of the conversation. So when you, like I was talking earlier about teaching fiscal responsibility to 10-year-olds, that's where it has to start. We have to stop giving allowances to children. My boys never got a dime for an allowance. Every penny they got, they earned. When people try to give them money, I used to say, no, you're not. What do you do to earn that? And, you know, did he sweep something? Did he dust something? You know, and you're not giving them a nickel unless they've earned it. And
Right.
Both boys are very successful today. They do very well. And they teach their children the same thing. If you want money, you have to earn it. You have to work. Trump had the right idea of making the country energy self-sufficient. And, you know, he had everything, and everything was rolling good. And Alberta, the Keystone Pipeline, all that stuff would have benefited Canada, the US, the Yukon. We all would have done well with that. But they, I don't know where to start with how they got power back. I mean, the Zuckerbergs with their money, soul they could buy, right? They lied, they cheated. They already had their people in power with James Comey, who's a psychotic nutcase. They already had all that in place. So when Trump made his second run, he was already up against almost an unbeatable force who had deep stated their way into everything, right?
Oh, that's a really
Canada
good point.
Is way beyond that. Canada's.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So Jack just was going to impede on that a little bit and just say that the liberal media organizations, CNN, MSNBC, so on and so forth in the United States, they funneled record amounts of money to hire journalists for the sole purpose of slandering Trump. So it's not much different than our effect on government money and media in Canada. And it's like when the Trump story went away, now we're looking at a big collapse of all these major news networks that basically can happen at any moment now. They're so plagued with scandals and problems right now. Like I don't suspect that it's very feasible to keep running the way they are. So you're right on the money when you said that.
My son was telling me tonight when I was driving back from Ottawa. I was taking care of some business in Ottawa. And I was driving back, and my son was telling me, he said, Dad, none of my friends watch CNN or MSNBC, or even, they don't even watch Fox News. They don't watch any of it. They watch Joe Rogan. I've never watched Joe Rogan, so I have to watch him, I guess, now. I guess he's got like 17 million followers now, is what I understand.
Yes, very huge.
Yeah, so we had Rebel News in Ottawa. We had True North. We had No Talk, I think it was called No Talk TV, on YouTube. We had a couple others, but the rest totally disappointed me. Global and CTV was horrible. Global was horrible. CBC, they hid mostly. They really did. They hid. They wouldn't put names on their cameras. They wouldn't put anything anywhere. And Global actually had bodyguards because I had to speak with one of them, and is just, I mean, the average Canadian, I think, if anything, is awakened to the fact that they're getting fed a line of BS. That's what it boils down to. There's a complete line of BS being fed to them, and they're starting to wake up and realize, I can't trust the CBC. I mean, CBC had us in with Putin, which to me is a compliment. Sorry. They had us in with the Russian collusion, and I thought, God, right up there with Trump. And
that's a good point.
We're walking.
I would like to ask everybody this: how outdated and how terrible do you guys think the interviews with Putin from several years ago after Trump got elected look? How bad do they look now that it's been proven that all this collusion stuff was created by the Hillary campaign? And then you have some journalist up there asking Vladimir Putin, so how much do you know Trump? What is your involvement with Trump? And he's like, I don't know him. I met him a couple of times, whatever. But the whole hour-long interviews with Putin, and that's all they could talk about was Trump with him. And how badly did that age?
I don't.
Putin actually liked Trump, and Trump liked Putin, and I respect Putin, believe it or not. They got all kinds of stories about him when he was with the Spitfire, or whatever you call it. And when I look at all the bikers in Russia, when Putin moves around, he's got them all as bodyguards. They all respect and like him, and he rides, and they ride with him. And he took a fallen society, a crushed, just a ruined fiscal place, and he took it and tried to reform it into something. And now they're trying to embarrass them with Ukraine. Of course, Biden's son goes over there and buys off people and spends, makes hundreds of millions of dollars and through the gas industry. Nobody says anything. They won't even investigate it. But all of a sudden now Putin is trying to protect his back door against having missiles parked in there from NATO. And everybody's angry at Putin. You've already seen that if there's world globalist people, if you don't play ball with them like those presidents, what was it? Costa Rica or Tanzania or Haiti or wherever, where they just had them executed, right? They wouldn't let their people get the vaccine, so they just executed the presidents and put somebody else in there and run the programs.
Well, we saw what happened in Libya with Muammar Gaddafi, right?
Absolutely.
That's the thing with that's what these Western powers do that is so dark, is they install puppet regimes in countries that they want to control, and that's the dark side of our society, and I'm ashamed to even be talking about it because it's underhanded. It's evil.
Yeah. Here's something in here. Think about it for a minute. Everybody watching this, just take a minute and think about it. We send hundreds of millions of dollars to so-called third world countries, right? Always sending money. So what does that do other than rise up the cabals, rise up the cartels, rise up the warlords, rise up all the people that want the money, and they'll kill their own people for it. If we have needs irrigation and they need agricultural help, why don't we send some of our retired farmers with equipment? Not money. Send farmers and equipment and personnel to go over there and train them how to run the irrigation equipment. It's that's just third world countries. Think about here in Ontario, right? We have reservations here in Ontario who are still on boiled water notices. They have to boil the water before they give it to their children or wash in it. Everybody should be in shame. If I was running this province, I would have the Corps of Engineers go onto that reservation as supervisors, and then I'd have them hire the local contractors so that the money goes into the reserve or into the area, and I hire the local contractors. And if I had to run a pipeline 3,000 miles to bring fresh water in, I would do it. I mean, this is what, 2022, and we're talking about a people that can't even get clean water because of the level of corruption within their own councils too. And these, the money corrupts. That's all there is to it. The love of money corrupts people, and it has to stop. We have to send personnel. We have to send resources. We have to send equipment. We have to send people to train people how to get what they want. But we don't. We send money, which starts wars. That's all it does.
I have to, the irony in a lot of what I'm seeing, and what's also kind of disgusting, is the same people that sit here at home and talk about gun laws and how they don't think civilians in Canada should have guns at all. They're the same people who are getting excited about sending, heavy arms to Ukraine so we can give them to civilians who are not even properly trained in how to use them, so they can go and fight this war with Russia, which is a war that was, in a way, sort of propagated by the West because we promised to back up the Ukrainians if there was a conflict. And now we're not going to send any soldiers. We're kind of saying, oh, well, here's a bunch of guns and grenades and you guys go fight. Good luck. To me, it's disgusting because you're putting just average moms and dads and families and just average citizens, civilians in harm's way by making these empty promises and empty commitments to the government and their people. And we've left them high and dry, as usual, again. It's a terrible thing to do to people.
Look at Vietnam. Vietnam is a great example of 1952 and the promises that were made. And the French were in there. They got their butts whipped. And you're going up against people who have been fighting guerrilla war for 1,000 years. I mean, they had all the tunnels, the VC, some of the best well-trained fighters in the world. These people could step into the bush and disappear just simply. I mean, they had people in Vietnam that could smell. They could smell your diet. So they're wondering how these guys are getting knocked off. Even though they're all hidden in the bush and everything, snipers, they're still getting picked off. Because the Viet Cong could smell the difference in diet. They could smell your food. You ever get on an elevator that people eat curry, right? They could smell the American food.
They could smell. They used to say they could smell the milk.
Absolutely, and they and like people stupid get in camouflage and break branches off here and branches off there and stick them in your helmet. Well, in that humidity, inside of 2 minutes, they start changing colors, and it's like, look at me over here. I mean, they lost so many men before they figured out, go home. Just get out of there and go home. And so I find that war creates refugees. Refugees are pull on the heartstrings of the people in different countries. And then you ship the refugees to whatever country you want to control the economy in. And you bring them in and you can't blame the refugees. They're in war-torn countries fighting to survive. They watch their children blown up.
100%.
So they come to a country like this, they'll work for peanuts. They'll work literally for nothing, just to have a peaceful life, right? And our worst day in Canada is the best day for them they've ever seen. And so refugees are used. Wars are started by the industrial war machine, obviously. That's why he killed Diana. Because she went against the anti-personnel grenades or the anti-personnel mines. So she had to go. I used to be a professional chauffeur. I know what it's like to drive something in the Mercedes 600 series. They're an amazing vehicle. You can never get in a safer vehicle than the Mercedes. Well, let's not get off. That's getting off track. But the whole idea is that conversation is the key. Education is the key. Don't be afraid to research the subjects you're talking about around your table. You know, if you got a subject comes up and your young lad says something, say, hey, son, go get the computer. Come on in here and show me what you mean. You know, and then you don't have to drag it out for 20 minutes, but 5 minutes on, you know, every night or something. And I was at a Thanksgiving dinner. There was 24 people, I think, in a room. And it was after the election here in Durham. And somebody asked me, hey, Jack, so what do you think of the election? And before I could say anything, the host stood up and said, we don't talk politics in this house. I've been back since. Doesn't bother me in the least. I still love them. I'll still be here if they need me. But I'm not going to go around the important subjects of life.
You know, to people like that, I would say, well, then what the hell do you talk about then?
Well, you know, you'd be shocked. They'll talk about the Simpsons and
the weather. How's the weather? Is the weather really nice? It's like, I don't know.
Netflix. They'll talk about Netflix. Trailer Park Boys. I mean, people look at Trailer Park Boys and these guys get 150, 250,000 an episode, right? And they do act stupid. And people actually believe there's real people out there like Trailer Park Boys. They think that's, you know.
And speaking of media and propaganda, this is just one example of propaganda that we're seeing coming out of Ukraine. And this is I guess it's Miss Universe Ukraine. Miss Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
And so this picture on the right was circulated on the internet of her carrying a rifle, and it says Miss Ukraine Anastasia Lena was crowned a national pageant winner in 2015, but the model has swapped her glamorous lifestyle to put her body on the line for Ukraine. Ukraine has 36,000 women serving in the military, and they are fighting their hearts out. And then we came to find out that that's an airsoft rifle.
Yeah.
It's being reported as. People are claiming it is an airsoft rifle.
Well, she's dressed in a photo shoot, got a pair of pants and a jacket. I mean, if she fell down, if she had to drop down on the rocks and take a firing stance, she'd spend so much time saying, "Oh, my elbows, oh my."
So, you know, and I, as you know, Jack, I worked for CTV for well over 25 years, and today I'm ashamed to tell people that because of what the network has become.
I wouldn't be. You worked there in the days of Dave Duvall and Lloyd Robinson, and she interviewed me, Deanie Petty, and they were great people. The CTV was a wonderful place back then.
It was a different operation, a different time, and journalism was certainly different back then. But from the way you saw the media behave in Ottawa, and from what you're seeing unfold in Ukraine, is it fair to say that your message to people when it comes to media is question everything?
Yeah, don't go to media for what you're looking for. What you want to do is, I watched a video today from a guy in the Ukraine who lives there, explaining about some kind of Bandera Nazis who have taken over part of Ukraine, how the Ukrainian people and the Russians actually get along quite peacefully, and how these other people have been killing their own people, killing Ukrainians. And then we saw that armored personnel carrier run over that car and try to crush the guy. Thank God he lived. I wouldn't. Okay, so any of the media like CNN, CBC, Global, CTV, CP24, I could go on and name them all, MSNBC, all of them. I wouldn't. If they told me it was raining outside, I'd still walk outside and check for myself, because you can't believe it.
That's right. I would too. It's exactly right.
Well, if you could pull that comment up by Patriot Roydy up again. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So this is actually a very good point that we have people sitting in Parliament right now. They are sitting in session and they are talking about Ukraine right now as we speak. It's very funny that they're saying that, oh, there's a lot of misinformation out there, but it's just like he says here. They clipped a video game and other videos from back in the day, and it's the mainstream media that's pushing it out. And yes, there is a lot of fake stuff going around on social media. We played some of that on here for you, where we'd seen an Eastern European looking place, and they're filming a movie there with an air raid siren, and they're saying, hey, look at this. But meanwhile, it's like a movie from the 2000s that they filmed. There is a lot of fake news out there, and you have to question everything. But it absolutely disgusts me that these politicians are saying, oh, well, they're spreading fake news on the social medias, but they're also spreading it on the mainstream media in probably a more horrendous manner. It's irresponsible of them, very irresponsible.
You remember when you were kids, did you ever read a comic book called Superman?
Well, yeah.
And Batman and Green Lantern and Wonder Woman and all these great, that made you feel you could do anything, like, yourself. Kids would go out. I did read Tarzan in the old classic comic books, and they'd go out swinging from trees. You could do anything. So now I worked in the movie industry, and I had somebody ask me, did you ever watch the movie you're doing? And I said, no. And he said, well, you should watch it. It's interesting. So I made it a point to go home, and I watched this movie. It was called The Boys. And it's a bunch of superheroes that have all this power, and they're kind of running the whole area where they're at. And this young one in her 20s wants to join. She's a pretty blonde and well-built, and she wants to join, and she's got these special powers. But in order to get into the club, she has to meet with the leader. And when she meets with the leader, she has to service him, if you know what I mean. It's late at night, the kids are in bed, hopefully. She has to take care of his sexual needs, right? And there's not too much left of the imagination. And so now that's where the superheroes, and another part of that is the guy who almost like a Flash, right? He can run really fast. He runs into this old lady or old guy that stepped out in front of him, and he tore them to pieces on the way through, right? And it's like blood and gore and sex. And is this what we're teaching our children? And if you go to the mandated vaccines down in Toronto, to the Scotiabank Arena, what have they got out front? They got people dressed like Spider-Man and all these superheroes. Like it's a mind. Got to be careful, and we use that word. It's a real cluster.
Cluster
clock. You said it, not me, but that's it.
Oh, I didn't swear. I said clock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cluster clock.
But if you go to the schools and you see it firsthand, like when my boys were in school, they gave one of my boys a hard time. I parked my 18-wheeler right up on the grass where it's not supposed to go. And I walked off the school bus lanes, and I walked in cowboy hat, jeans, cowboy boots, and I walked in and I said, where's the principal? And the lady said, well, who are you? And I said, I didn't ask you. And asked me my name. I said, where's the principal? And this guy stepped out of an office and said, well, he's not here, but I'm the acting vice principal. He said, you and I are going to have a conversation. And I said, the way the conversation is going to go, I said, is I'm going to take these pair of size 10 cowboy boots. I'm going to light them up the side of your head if what I heard is true. And he's like, whoa. And to his credit, his name was Mr. Baker. He was a very nice, very intelligent, very good guy. And him and I sat and talked. And I asked him about what I had heard about one of my sons, and he explained to me that he didn't know anything about it. And the long story short is that he had a new teacher come in. His regular teacher had gotten cancer, and a new teacher come in not knowing any situations, and that just caused some issues, right? But the idea is that if you're not willing to go to the schools and fight for your kids, I'll do the same thing for my grandchildren. If someone's feeding them crap, I'm going to be on the doorstep, no mask, on the doorstep the same day, and they're gonna know that something's going to happen. It's like going to the hospital to visit. A friend of mine, he got sick in Ottawa, and so he returned home. And when he got back home out west, he went into the hospital because he didn't feel good, and he went to the hospital. And then they wouldn't let his family in to see him, and he died alone. And I said, and anybody listening to this, you can take it down and mark it down because it's not real unless you do it. It's only talking. I'll take a couple of 308s over each of my shoulders or a couple of 12 gauge shotguns. If I have somebody in the hospital, I guarantee you I'm going to get to see them. No one's going to stop me.
We've all lost people in the past 2 years, and many people have not been able to see those people. It's heart-wrenching how much they have undervalued being able to see your loved one in a palliative situation in the hospital, and it's absolutely disgusting. And they did not at any point bump up home care the way that they could have in order to allow those palliative people to be able to see their loved ones and at the end of life. At least in Ontario, it's probably the crime of the century is all the people who have died alone.
There's a lot of money,
2 years.
but there's a lot of money being made in syndicated funeral homes, nursing and retirement homes, and insurance companies. Like there's a lot of money invested in these insurance companies, and people that used to have to run some pretty illegal stuff are now making millions and millions of dollars legally because they've taken control of the insurance, the retirement, nursing, the funeral homes. There's another one they've got control. Oh, the big pharma. That's where they're making their money, right?
Yep.
By the way, somebody mentioned ivermectin there. You better get, if you can get the 3 milligram tablets of ivermectin, you'll be better. I mean, I don't mind the taste of ivermectin. I've taken it, or the liquid, but some people find it pretty horrendous.
I see that John Murnick says police are sitting at the entrances in Windsor hospitals. That's something that blows my mind. It's like the media and government spun this narrative that you had these racist, violent truckers who wanted to attack hospitals and hospital workers. It just sickened my stomach when I heard that kind of thing.
Yeah, the press release was that in Toronto, before they had the big Toronto protests against mandates, they had put out memos at the hospital saying that hospital workers should not wear scrubs to work and that sort of thing.
So that they wouldn't be recognized as healthcare workers because they were afraid the truckers were going to come and attack them.
So
it's just ridiculous.
Jack, we have to ask you, Jack, what's the beef between truckers and healthcare workers? Why can't you guys get along?
This is stupid.
Well, listen, there was an injunction put in by a constitutional lawyer named David Cowling of Johnson and Cowling, and he put the injunction in on Tuesday morning, which I think had a lot to do with Stockboy changing his mind and revoking the War Measures Act. And so David files, I think it was Friday afternoon or Friday morning. He actually got what they call airtime to actually talk about that. And he was representing the frontline nurses, right? He was representing the frontline nurses. So when him and I talked, I connected him with a spokesman for the truckers, Tim Junker. And so Tim is going to get together with David, and he's going to be the witness for, or representative for the truckers in this case. Frontline nurses, we're members of the Canadian COVID Care Alliance. The vast majority of us, we support it all. This is all it's like the guns. They found all them guns in Coots. Did you see that? All these automatic weapons with just coincidentally they found them with bulletproof vests and all this stuff, right? Like it's like
with Diagolon patches apparently.
Oh yeah, I'm sure Jeremy must have been terrified of that. And then the Savage Gun Factory, which is down the street here, these Savage guns, which are normally shipped separate, where suddenly they're shipping a load of these guns with the mags and everything,
Yeah, we don't have any follow-up on that. We also don't have any follow-up on the supposed individuals who are arrested in Ottawa with firearms.
Yeah, well, they didn't find nobody not with firearms. Anything they found was planted.
That's what General Swally said before he got kicked. That they had found somebody.
Peter, boy, they love them in Toronto. They just love Peter in Toronto. Go ask some of the DPS guys in Toronto. What do you think of Peter Stoley? They'll tell you. They'll tell you without hesitation. So the guns were found in Peel. The tractor was found in Peel, and the trailer was found. I'm not sure it was found in Peel, but it was found separate. And then an inside source tells me they were doing a forensic audit on the weapon pieces to make sure everything was there. The last I heard, but don't you find that a little bit coincidental that Savage just happened to lose a couple of thousand? Sorry, Savage just happened to lose a couple of thousand weapons, right? Gosh, what a! I wonder how much money they've got invested in the vaccine programs, or what member of the board is with the WEF, or how much money they donate. Did I do a forensic audit on them? How much money do they donate to the Liberal Party or the NDP?
Well, they certainly have a pretty slick media operation, and just the way they spin the stories and the way they fabricate things, and it scares me, because if they can do it there, they've done it before. They're going to do it again. They can do it to you. They can do it to anybody.
Yeah, but we're used to it. Like, you're looking at somebody who, I see me fall asleep under my 18-wheeler on the side of the road at a 401 at Dixie Road in 3 feet of slush, because it all turns to slush in the plows. I see me sleep underneath my truck trying to fix a broken starter wire, and I got so tired that I just had to have a nap. And the OPP came by and woke me up. He said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm just trying to have a nap." He couldn't believe it. He said, "Get the hell out from under there." I said, "I'll get out from here when I fix my starter cable." He said, "No, are you all right?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you're tired. Why don't you lay in your bunk?" I said, "Because my truck's not running." But you have a snowmobile suit on, right?
Yeah.
I didn't just lay in the snowbank and go to sleep. Meanwhile, we got all these houseless people. I don't call them homeless. I call them houseless, because home is where you hang your hat. Home is where your heart is. So if your home is a what do you call them, a container box or under a bridge, if that's your home to you, if that's where you feel safe, I will give you the dignity and respect you deserve, and that's your home. And so, but we let these houseless people walk around with getting frostbite and all kinds of stuff, right? When all it takes is a lousy snowmobile suit, pair of boots, and some balaclava and a cup of coffee to keep them warm and keep them alive, get them through the winter time. But we neglect them, and I think the Doug Fords of the world are going to stand before their creator and answer for that, because I've seen a lot of misery in the streets of Toronto, a lot of it. So
Jack, it's a little after 9:00.
Yeah, we've been going ahead.
Brings us to the end, and I'd like to throw the floor open to you, and just give you the opportunity to share any final thoughts with people here tonight, because we've covered a lot of ground, but I'm sure that you have some words of wisdom and maybe some inspiration for people to close things off tonight.
Well, I think what we're seeing here is the nucleus, is the embryo of a movement of growth. It's never going to stop. I think it's like the ember that's being fanned, and the ember is being fanned by the everyday Canadian. It's being fanned by people that in here, there's something that says something's not right. Right? We have to fix it. I don't know how to fix it, but I know it needs to be fixed. And so by us fanning it, they're thinking, okay, like people call me all the time and say, "What can we do? Should we go to Ottawa?" I say, no, don't go to Ottawa. Just build a convoy in Whitby, build a convoy in Oshawa, build a convoy in Chatham, and go around your town with some flags and signs. You don't have to block traffic. Just make yourself noticeable. Make yourself noticeable, because every person you awaken is one more person that's going to awaken somebody else. The 6 degrees of separation, right? We all know 250 people. And I'm going back to old style communication with our truck drivers, because we've found that there's infiltrators that try to get in on the electronic stuff. So we're going back to the old fashioned way we used to communicate. And nobody can get into it, nobody can touch it, nobody can decipher it. And that's what we're going to do. And they've declared war on us, which is their mistake. Because like I said to one of the officers on the line, I said, did you ever fire that thing a live round at a real person? And I could see it in his eyes. He wouldn't answer me, but I could see it in his eyes. I said, that's the difference between you and I. You know, I said, you guys have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea who you're going up against with these people. I said, these are all peaceful, loving, just freedom-loving family people that just want to pet their dogs and love their children and, you know, and work honestly and help people. If there's anything you saw in Ottawa, was a number of truckers that went and picked up garbage, not only their own garbage, but garbage along the roads. And like one Tim Hortons guy said, and by the way, they were incredible, Tim Hortons. Starbucks sucked. But Tim Hortons said they'd never seen their bathrooms that clean, because everybody went in and cleaned the bathroom after them, right? And so I think, to sum it up, I think what we have with a program like yours, especially you guys, is we have the nucleus, right? And it's growing, and it's just going to get better, and it's going to get better. And I don't think anything's going to stop it. I can just feel it. We all feel it in the air. We all have this common bond across the country that we've got, that we can feel it in here, that it's not going to stop. We're going to cleanse our country.
I agree. I don't think that from what we saw happen in Ottawa and right across the country, I just don't think there are too many Canadians who love the country too much to let it die. They want their freedom back, and somehow, some way, peacefully, it's just going to happen. So with that, thank you, Jack, for joining us tonight. It was inspirational and insightful, and from all the comments that we've seen here tonight, I think the viewers got a lot out of it as well. And yeah, and clearly the freedom movement is still alive and well, and the battle might be over in Ottawa, but the war is certainly not over, and it's still to be won. So with that being said, thank you again for joining us here on the broadcast.
It's been a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm a pretty good judge of character. As Rick knows, him and I had a couple of texts between us, and I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, I am so pleased that we had this program. And the honesty of both of you, when you speak, you can just hear it in your voices, the sincerity, the honesty. You're doing all the things, like you guys would make great leaders. You're the ones that should be in Queen's Park. You're the ones that should be in Ottawa, right? Because you use common sense.
Yeah, we like the truth too much for that.
Oh, but you have to bring it with you.
Okay, well, with that, we will sign off, and thank you again, Jack, and keep fighting for freedom. It's been great to make a new friend in you, and we are going to stay in touch. For sure.
And I will connect you to some other people that I really think you need to. You'll enjoy.
Appreciate that, and the platform is theirs as needed. So appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Rick.
All right.
Thanks,
all right. Take care.
See you guys.
Take care. Bye for now. And that was Jack McClellan, trucker and great Canadian. And we really appreciated him joining us on the program tonight.
He's got lots of insight as to how things have been going and where things are going. I don't think I've had. Well, I mean, it's just that's one of the most amazing things about what we do here is we get to connect with people and hear different points of view. I appreciated his insight as to some of the things he may have said, like about the PPC and about Randy Hillier. Interesting concept. And I think we need those discussions to challenge even our own biases at times. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything that he said was constructive and productive and inspirational, because people have been wondering, like, what's going on behind the scenes, and Jack is connected. He knows what's going on out there. And if he says that it's that the movement is still alive and well, I believe that. And
Absolutely.
I think that gives people new hope as well. And I think that's what people have really been looking for out there on the freedom side, for sure.
Well, I've said it once, and I'm going to say it again. We are at the Empire Strikes Back section of the hero's journey here. We've just witnessed Luke Skywalker get his hand cut off, and now we're into the next bit of it. Just remember, Return of a Jedi comes right after. So there's going to be some regrouping. We have the warm summer coming up ahead of us. And only God knows what that's going to bring in the near future, because I'm strapped in, and I can't wait to see it. It's anybody's guess what's going to happen, but I think that there's going to be more struggle still to come. But the the information war still rages on, and we're still going to be right here with you guys. And please remember to, if you are able to, support us further. We are building, and we are going to build better. Not back better. We're going to build it better. freedomreporters.com. You go to the hot link down below. Please, if you are unable to support us in that way with a donation, please give this video a like and hit the subscribe button and the bell button for notifications. Everything you guys do really helps us out a lot, and myself and Rick greatly appreciate it. With that being said, keep the hope up, everybody. It's still a long journey to go, but we're going to be right here with you. My name is Brendan Kennedy. I'm a freedom reporter with Maverick News. It's been excellent being on the show with you tonight. Thank you so much.
And Jack has been out there fighting for freedom. Thousands and thousands of truckers and ordinary Canadians across the country have been out there fighting for freedom. Canada is gone, but we're trying to bring it back. We're here fighting on the front lines of the information war, and there are many battles still to be fought, and that's why we're going to expand our operation, our news operation here, our video platforms, and we're determined. We've been fighting in a variety of ways, but this is something that we know can be effective. My specialty is media, as Brendan knows, and he's a talented guy, and we're here working together, and very handsome too, I might add. But this is a very serious thing, and we need your help. We can't do this alone. If you can donate, go to freedomreporters.com, as Brendan mentioned, and that's where you can donate, or just subscribe to the channels and support what we're doing on YouTube, Facebook, and soon on Gab, Rumble, BitChute, and other video platforms as well. I know that we are making a difference because of the feedback we've been getting, but the question is, what are you doing to fight for freedom? Find a way, if you can, in your own way. Help us. Find another way to help your country. What are you doing to make Canada a better place? Reach down and find something within yourself. That's my message to everyone tonight. Do something constructive. Get out there and fight for freedom in some way. Everybody can do it in a different way. We're here fighting the information war. Maybe you can find a way to fight as well. What are you doing? What are you doing? There's a question I'll leave with everyone tonight as we wrap up, and remind everyone that we will be back with more live coverage of everything going on with the freedom movement, with the truckers, with the People's Convoy in the U.S., more coverage of what's going on in Ukraine tomorrow. And and any other issues that kind of pop up between now and then. We'll be monitoring the entire news landscape between now and tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when we return with more of the Freedom Reporters here on the Maverick News Network. Thank you all for watching. We are the antivirus program for your mind. Catch you on the